Sonic Adventure, the launch title, I'd argue, was the biggest selling point for the late Dreamcast. It was one of many launch titles, but it's Sonic, Sega's love child. Many people undoubtedly bought the Dreamcast just to play Sonic Adventure. If I hadn't been an incomeless kid, maybe I'd have been one of that many. Instead, I had the GameCube DX version like most other people I knew. It's a well-known fact that this port is worse than the Dreamcast original, having broken things like the lighting engine and introducing bugs that weren't present beforehand. It is such a long list that I cannot possibly cover it all here without doubling the length of this video, so I'll leave it at that. All of my personal experience is with the DX port, and I didn't even know aspects of the game were flawed back when I played it. None of us did, I'm guessing. However, with the power of modding, we can bring back and fix all of the aspects lost in the Dreamcast version of the game, as well as even more goodies. If you haven't tried playing unmodded Sonic Adventure DX, it's an outdated port with all the issues packaged in from the DX port. If I remember correctly, I believe Sonic Adventure was ported from Dreamcast to GameCube, and then that GameCube port was used as the Xbox 360, PS3, and Steam ports. It's the equivalent of taking a picture of a picture, so you lose quality with each snapshot of a snapshot. To be fair to this port, it was released all the way back in 2011. Quality standards were much lower back then. If you can recall PC gaming back in that day, games were slapped up onto PCs as an afterthought by developers and publishers. The PC audience was secondary to the console ones. There are still some remnants of that mentality in modern day gaming, where a port to Steam will be below average, such as lacking mouse support and menus. Sega's made no attempt to maintain or re-release it since, so this is what we've got. Again though, with the power of mods, we can restore the Dreamcast's original look and even grab some upgrades for ourselves. Higher quality models and textures, restored lighting, and they even have the DLCs as accessible content you can play without having to download it from a long-gone service. Yes, Sonic Adventure had DLC back in the day. Most of it is event-style stuff, like Christmas and Halloween decoration. This is pretty cool to discover, but some of the DLCs are replaying portions of stages with advertisements of AT&T and Reebok shoes, which is oddly hilarious but also dystopian at the same time. It was definitely a different time back then. For this supercut analysis of Sonic Adventure, I'm going to be using PKR's mod installer. I followed its guide mode to activate Dreamcast lighting, HD textures and UI, as well as a few other things. If you want your Sonic Adventure looking and playing similar to the Dreamcast original, I will put the link to it down in the description. Without any further preamble, let's drop right into the opening cutscene and get to talking about Sonic Adventure as a game. This game plops us right into a place called Station Square, giving us a few panning shots before a helicopter flies overhead. We see Sonic wall running and jumping building to building, seemingly enjoying a night run at the expense of the people who catch a glimpse of the blue blur flying past their windows. We have to push Sonic's public disturbances aside, because some cop cars are off in a hurry to another location. Sonic, ever the curious cat, follows along in hopes of making his night a little bit more interesting. We cut to a water entity of some kind dropping from a roof above. The police unload at least 100 bullets into Chaos, but to no avail, and it's crazy what you could get away with back in the day. I doubt Sonic as a brand would even try bringing guns back these days, just to put it in perspective. Even funnier, once the police see their bullets are entirely ineffective, they immediately dip out and retreat, truly protecting and serving guys. They also abandon their cars, and if you look at how some of them are placed in the scene, there's no feasible way they could have pulled into there quickly with the light posts around. Whatever. While the police force is easily intimidated, Sonic hops onto the scene without a care in the world, looking for his next fix of fun. I feel like Sonic has lost this aspect to himself as a thrill seeker in recent games. Characterization that is sorely missed in my mind. Sonic's cutscene with Shadow in Shadow Generations, where he takes the fake Chaos Emerald from him, has some of that similar energy at least.
Time to have a little fun.
Sonic.
Hop on and go for a ride, Shadow. How about jacking that for a little joyride?
It's massive. More than I imagined.
Interesting thing to note here, Sonic picks up the rings in the cutscene, so when we cut to gameplay, Sonic automatically has 2 rings just in case you don't know what rings do at this point. You've got 1 guaranteed hit. Chaos Zero is an incredibly easy fight, but this is also serving as your very first experience moving around as Sonic in this game. The game throws you into a fight that feels intimidating with zero guidance, and I think even a brand new gamer could brute force this fight eventually. When Chaos Zero jumps up onto the poles above, It gives you a taste of moving Sonic without the camera directly following him. It's a skill you'll need in all later levels, so the game is setting expectations early with how to familiarize yourself with Sonic's controls. The small arena and simple goal with no expectations of navigating platforms at high speeds gives you a freedom to get to grips with Sonic's basics while also setting up the new antagonist. Calling Chaos a big drip is so on brand. I love it. It doesn't instigate Chaos to stay any longer, and then we pan up to a nearby Dr. Eggman that gives a little extra context and a lot of maniacal laughter. He must think Sonic is deaf or something, but Eggman sure does love to gloat. We abruptly cut to the next sunny day, with Sonic lounging out by the pool. The sudden shift doubles down on Sonic's carefree spirit, going from fighting a brand new foe to taking a chill pill the next moment. He's not doing any kind of investigating, no, he's just chilling. Of course, his rest is short-lived, because in the next moment, we catch Tails spiraling out of control, and a concerned Sonic goes to check up on his friend. A lady by the pool has literally zero sympathy, but you know, if my time off was ruined by crazy, unpredictable circumstances, I'd be kinda miffed too. The hotel manager mirrors this lady's lack of worry, questioning Sonic if the manager should go take a look or not. Truly the most caring people humanity has to offer. Mapping the interact button to the spin dash button was a poor choice, because activating it means spin dashing off and committing assault on whatever NPC half the time. It's finicky to get into position to initiate dialogue, but you don't have to speak to anyone, so it's not too bothersome. These polygons might put Lara Croft to shame. Damn. This kid here gives us some tips, while also making me wonder, do humans understand how rings work for Sonic? Does this mean humans can pick up rings to protect themselves as well? Do humans in this universe see themselves in a third person with random camera shifts if they're acknowledging it in-world? Sadly, this explanation for fighting the wonky camera is poor and missable, so learning how to control Sonic will have to come from experience, just how I like it personally. We've got nowhere else to go but to check on Tails, so let's get into the first action stage of Sonic Adventure. Interestingly, if you homing attack around the umbrellas, you'll home into them. They're fun little distractions, and also another risk-free tutorial to get further familiarized with homing attacks. Turning the camera around shows free ring boxes, rewarding exploration and teaching you to look for goodies in each stage forward. Something I love to do in this stage is spin dash up this very first incline to skip the boardwalks, but I wanted to show off this section, so I didn't do it this time. The walls stretch and fling you back inwards, acting as a safety net to keep you on track if you're going too fast and can't control yourself. There's a lower area that's safe to come down to with some rings and a spiky ball, introducing you to moving hazards within the stages. Interesting a beach resort has something so dangerous, but don't worry about that or the robo-monkeys around, I guess. I have no idea how I managed to fly off the loop, but I managed to save it despite the camera wrestling with me. Whew. The camera in all of Sonic Adventure is in some opposition to you. More than I remember, actually. Since this is Sonic's first outing in 3D, it's clear they were playing by ear with most of what they tried here. The cinematography in the cutscenes looks wild and imaginative, often unfitting of the scene at hand and very experimental. Basically, they were doing some things simply because they could. And while that can be frustrating, Sonic Team testing their limits back in the day with this game was probably exhilarating to experience as a new player. They wanted this game to be epic, and despite the blemishes it has, they succeeded in some sense in my mind. You may have noticed animals dropping from defeated enemies. Eggman's robots still have animals in them, but we collect them here like in 3D Blast. You don't drop them when you're hit, thankfully, and they serve a function in another mode we'll get introduced to later. They move to you, so you don't have to put too much into collecting them either. It's kind of like you're rescuing them, which feels really in line with what Sonic would do. After another short section, we come up on the iconic spectacle of the orca jumping above the bridges, causing the water to ripple. This is an effect that is ruined in the DX port of the game, but it's restored here with my mods I have installed. I don't know what vendetta this orca has against Sonic, but this set piece is still even fun today to run through. Short bursts of automation like this help you keep on track and feed you the extreme moments of speed hard to otherwise create in non-scripted moments. At least for players of all skill levels, that is. My homing attack connects with a bomb instead of the robo-monkey, costing me all my rings. Just another bit of old game jank. Nothing to it, really. You ascend this rock formation and up to a lighthouse, before entering a different area and a semi-Act 2 of the zone. For Sonic, Most of his stages come in 2 to 3 parts like this, and they come with scenery shifts that remain on the same general theme. I love this as a seamless inclusion of the 2-act structure the games have, and it keeps us on our toes for what to expect next. You can make the choice to run up the wall here and collect the speed shoes to zoom to the next area, but I chose the lower path to showcase it. The enemies skating over the water are a nice touch, and I'm personally a huge fan of a unique cast of robots per setting. When you see a couple generic ones for the entire game, it can get sort of boring. Sonic Adventure sits between both having some unique robot designs for some zones, but lending their robot designs to some other action stages. As an example, Robo-Monkeys are present in a great amount of the stages. The design here is intended to guide you through the level geometry they've put here, but you take advantage of the powerful spin dash and jump to skip this whole section too if you fancy. While this game still has some aspects of the upper and lower path design, those paths tend to converge more frequently here. This area is an example of multiple ways forward, with there being 2 ways to get up and progress down what is ultimately a singular path. These stages are designed to be visited by multiple characters, so many aspects of the stage's design will reflect that. It makes the world feel much more connected with this approach, even if designing the stages for multiple characters does impact how much parts of the level take advantage of certain characters' movesets. If both Amy and Sonic have to get through a certain part of a stage as an example, it needs to be navigatable by a much slower Amy as well as a zoomy Sonic. I'll get more into it later when we reach the other characters, but it's something to keep in mind. No ranking at the end of the stages, but you do get your rings tallied up at the end for something. Wonder what that could be. Tails seems to be alright, and we figure out that Tails was testing out his plane using a Chaos Emerald as a power supply. It's wild when you consider that it's an 8-year-old using an object of supposed infinite power for his plane. Should he even be using the Chaos Emeralds for something so mechanical like that? Aren't they an aspect of nature that shouldn't be messed with? I'm not going to ask any more moral questions about a blue hedgehog and a two-tailed fox using Jesus powers to fly a plane. I'll be here forever. Tails implores Sonic to come to his workshop with him at Mystic Ruins, and I guess that landing wasn't so bad that Tails can't walk it off. He must have had rings on him. Has anyone ever wondered about that? Do rings just stay with them until they get hit by something? Do the effects of rings ever wear off? It's better I just suspend my disbelief and accept this concept as something inherent to the world that doesn't need a deeper explanation, but, you know. Kinda funny to think about Sonic rolling off his bed at night, only to drop all his rings from bumping the floor wrong. This interaction also unlocks Tails as playable, so you could go switch over and play him right now if we wanted. I'll be playing through the entirety of Sonic's campaign before touching the others, so we'll continue Sonic's story for now. If you aren't in the know, Sonic's story is the longest out of everyone's, naturally, but it's incredibly lopsided. You could add up Amy, Gamma, and Big's campaigns together, and Sonic's would still likely be longer. It's odd they divided some tutorials into this boy here, with the rest being present in Tikal's red ball form. The red ball will help every character out through their adventures, but she's so much more than a simple tutorial box to hit. Her appearance in Sonic's story is so nonchalant, so you don't assume her to be anything more than a simple tutorial. I'll talk about her more later as she comes up. Here's an example of me struggling to talk to another NPC, just for her to yap about nothing important at all. I can't explain me jumping into the water here. I guess that's just the call of the void getting to me. After that brief exploration of the void, here we are at the Mystic Ruins. This place is much more spread out than Station Square, and I'm a big fan of this huge brick archway the trains come in on. Crazy to think the left wall that breaks later is technically inside Angel Island. That whole left wall is the Fallen Island, and I never put 2 and 2 together until now. I just didn't think about it. Anyways, we head on up these stairs to catch Tails at his workshop, only to run into Robotnik. I actually believe it's here where Eggman is insisted he's called Dr. Robotnik for the last time. From here on, I think he's just Dr. Eggman. I like how they go about it here, like a casual disregarding of Eggman's wants and mocking him, which he rightfully deserves. Better not interfere, or else. Like every villain ever hasn't said those exact words. Damn, Sonic is really laying the insults on thick, isn't he? More words back and forth are exchanged, and Eggman dips off screen to change models. The Egg Hornet. Not really a thrilling thing to go against, but it is vaguely Hornet shaped, so props for that. It even has the stingers. It shoots missiles, and when he dives down into the ground, you can do this to him as Sonic. God, I love doing things developers didn't intend. Right after we dispatch Eggman, one of the goofiest, most cartoony exchanges happens. Tails walks up to Eggman holding out an emerald after he's been defeated. Eggman then, of course, sends out a claw to just grab it from Tails' hands, and then both Sonic and Tails stand there while Eggman very slowly feeds the Chaos Emerald to Chaos. Fastest thing alive? Doesn't matter if Sonic's got the slowest reaction speed on this earth. I can easily imagine a remake of this scene where Eggman feigns being defeated, then surprise attacks Tails, knocks the emerald out of him, then snatches it from a much quicker Sonic that attempts to snatch it up. Maybe Sonic even intercepts it and manages to knock it from Eggman's grasp, only for it to land right on a puddle of chaos that was waiting. It'd effectively be the same scene, but it would make our characters look less like actors in a play. Gosh, I wish this game was remade. This plot could be spruced up so nicely. It's the perfect skeleton of a plot to flesh out and make a true banger. Also, Eggman is goofy for thinking Chaos will work for him. Is it ever said how he convinces Chaos to work for him even now? Is Chaos just tagging along because he's using Eggman for his own agenda? The plot's set up for us to collect the Chaos Emeralds before Eggman does. So off we go to the next stage with the Wind Key. Little thing to point out, but if you leave an object somewhere and go a bit too far away, it'll respawn back without you having to go through a load zone. Pointing this out because with old games, if you destroyed objects you needed for like a puzzle, you would have to go in and out of the area in order to refresh the zone. Before we head off to Windy Valley though, I go to check if the Chow Garden is already open. It is. I don't put too much effort into raising Chow in this playthrough, but it's crazy that this is a side mode in the game to begin with. In Sonic Adventure 1, they just have their own version of race, while SA2 adds the karate and other features. Just to reiterate, I'm going to leave this video exclusively for going through Sonic Adventure's main story. If I were to try and go through the game to earn all of the emblems, I think it'd be something good to do on a live stream. Get some help when I'm lost, name some Chow after some viewer requests. Seems like it would be a great time, but back to the video. I honestly thought Hero and Dark Chow were introduced in Sonic Adventure 2 to go with the Hero and Dark stories, but apparently not. I went really hard on the Chow Garden in SA2 if it wasn't obvious from how I'm talking about it. Again, there isn't too much to say about it since I don't interact extensively with it in this current playthrough, so let's move on to Windy Valley. This is one of the top songs in the game for me. It sounds like wind chimes dinging in the air on a windy day. It's a damn shame that the platforming section here is so short, so we can't really enjoy it for that long. Within 30-40 seconds, you'll be swept up by the tornado, and you'll be ascending it with another tune. The camera's all over the place in here, and while it can be somewhat difficult to navigate, getting to the top is another 20-30 seconds of gameplay at most. Now we've arrived at the main bulk of the act. This semi-Act 3 of Windy Valley feels like how treacherous Sky Sanctuary would be if it had been made in 3D. It feels like we're impossibly high up in the sky, and there's only one path forward to go for most of it. The path forward is nothing but a straightaway, with the main challenge being keeping your speed up while the camera shifts perspectives. It is part of the intended challenge in the game, which I don't think any Sonic game after this really plays with, if I'm correct. It's an interesting concept, but going forward, they mostly automate moments like this in future games to prevent frustration. I'm not sure if gamers back then entirely were aware it's part of the intended challenge with the camera, or maybe it's just not a good concept to begin with, but we don't see too much of it in this game anyways. I'd say Windy Valley is the one stage that really plays with the camera while moving fast. If this stage were more automated, it wouldn't be compelling to run forward down these twists and turns, but because the control is so much looser and it's up to us to control Sonic if we want to go fast, you have to make an active effort to go fast. A change in controls really alters what makes level design fun or not, huh? This level would be seen as boring with boost controls as an example. Tails f***ing robs the rocket from me here for some reason, and every time you see me accidentally hit him later on, it was intentional due to this betrayal. The invisible paths of leaves throughout are exhilarating on a first run through, and I love automation that takes advantage of the environment. This easily could have been a rail with the same fancy camera work, but the invisible wind path vaguely alluded to by leaves makes it special instead. See, that's my big thing with automation that I ragged on in Shadow Generations. Rails floating in the air aren't exciting anymore when you've done it a million times through a million different settings. Only in Windy Valley will you run over an invisible wind path. Sure, Sonic has invisible paths later, but this is thematically appropriate and gives it that distinction to keep it fresh in my mind. This level does also have these small points where you're able to run around to find secrets or alternate paths. They're more expanded on in other stages for sure, but I appreciate them still being present here to keep us curious and exploring. If you can wrestle against the camera well enough, You can also cut some twists and turns out of your run for a faster time. Part of the fun of levels not preventing you from taking the intended path is breaking free from it to create your own paths, which is more satisfying in repeat playthroughs 100% of the time. Part of what makes these levels so replayable is because of that aspect. We should also all keep this in mind. This is the first time they're doing full 3D like this. So the speed back then by itself was more novel and entertaining because of it. Just running forward isn't as fun now as it was back when we first got to. Naturally, and I don't think this level is designed too well even now, but controls and a little bit of nostalgia keep things fun. I remember jumping down the long drop as Sonic and trying to land directly on the island with a goal. Good times. You know, considering most of the level isn't taking place in the valley, the stage's name is a bit inaccurate, right? Tails only goes through the third act, but Omega goes through an extended version. Oh, I said Omega, oh my god, I just realized. But Gamma goes through an extended version of the first one. So we do get to spend at least some time with that catchy tune. Random thought, it'd be cool to see other characters going through stages they never have before. What would Big Fishing look like in Windy Valley? What about Amy at Emerald Coast? Knuckles and Ice Cap? I can see the potential mod in question being named Sonic Adventure Complete. The extra levels don't necessarily need to have story relevance. It would just be nice to play through meatier campaigns for the other characters. Not Big though. I do not want to go fishing as Big again unless it's with a completely different control scheme. I'm not looking forward to the Big the Cat section. Ugh. Tails also photobombs me hardcore at the end of the level, like he's seen the sins of my entire family tree while staring into my eyes. While running around, I also nearly get Sonic ran over by a taxi. Sheesh, give the taxi driver a medal, because he stopped on a damn dime. Time passes after you pick up the Lightspeed shoes, which aren't really a factor in Sonic's moveset that are used much. After that, we rob the store owner of his Chow egg by switching it with an egg-shaped rock. I don't come to the Chow Garden again after this, but I was in awe at these tutorials. I don't remember being in the game at all. This was technically my second time to the Chow Garden, but I guess the game expects you to come here first. Is there anywhere in the game world that indicates the existence of Chow Gardens, by the way? Is this a side feature you can completely pass up without external information or stumbling across it? I'm sure at least one NPC talks about it, right? Talking to this one kid clued me into his tragic ongoing tale of childhood neglect. Damn. Too relatable, Sonic Adventure. This sign here says the casino is open, but the way in is closed. An arbitrary way to force us to need the Lightspeed Dash, but a funny little trolling from the developers, I guess. And here we have my least favorite Sonic stage in the game. The pinball physics aren't the best, nor is earning 400 rings without dropping them at all. There are very few hazards in the stage, but it's still very nerve-wracking to carry around a lot at once knowing you could drop them. I appreciate the switch up in the formula, so I'm not exactly mad at this level, but it's definitely my least favorite out of all Sonic stages. I still enjoy playing through it, and the sewer section is normal action platforming if you're uninterested in the casino board gameplay. Getting to explore the upper section as Knuckles adds another layer to the level. Like Sonic could go up there if he had a spring to send him up. Imagine how much more these locations would be fleshed out if we metaphorically came here as Big or Amy. Such a cool idea. I love these levels. The most infuriating thing in Sonic's campaign has to be that there's an invisible wall preventing you from simply jumping up to the emerald and yoinking it. I know everyone who came into this room tried to grab it as well, only to be met with a faceplant into the invisible wall, the same way I did. We know we could reach it if not for game design. Just put it behind a glass wall, problem solved. Moving on to the showers, Sonic can wash off after a particularly stinky run through the sewers prior. It's a nice attention to detail. It reminds you this game is made by people who cared about not just us having fun, but also having fun themselves, creating little unnecessary things like this that enhance the world and how immersed we are in it. Even if AI gets to the point of being able to make full games all on their own, they won't be able to recreate that feeling of silly little Sonic taking a silly little shower after going through a silly little sewer in a silly little casino. These little machines you can bonk let you collect some rings, allowing those who might be struggling with the pinball tables to at least deposit some rings and eventually beat it. If you're also a few short, you don't have to go back onto one of the boards. Well thought out. You don't see whole other games within games these days. This is like finding Mario in a Legend of Zelda game. When was the last time Sega cared about knights, by the way? They clearly cared lots about it here when making this game. The stage could have been a nice distraction from the gameplay if I could get into enjoying this alternate gameplay. But when you get under 100 rings and lose all your balls, you get shat out into the sewers. This is the most direct, indirect way for Sega to call us trash, literally dumping us down into a dump for being bad. Going here immediately is probably the fastest way to earn rings for most people. Sonic shakes off his fur here before climbing up the ladder back to the casino, which is another lovable detail that comes from the heart. It's also a subtle way to show a more animalistic trait to Sonic, reminding us he's indeed a hedgehog and a living, breathing being instead of just a vehicle for our enjoyment of the game. He's a character we control, but he is still Sonic. Little details like this are the most important parts of art, again, that AI would miss. I don't know why I decided to randomly bring up AI here, but, you know, might as well throw my 2 cents in. I think I was having a stroke trying to grab the emerald. I don't know how I managed to not grab it for over 5 seconds, but please don't bully me. We managed to collect 2 emeralds, and Eggman immediately manages to snatch one from us by simply attempting to body slam Sonic and Tails in his Eggmobile. Then he hits them with the sleep gas, which he should really use more often. Seriously. And is Sonic and Tails out for the rest of the night, since they wake up the next day? This feels like a story I wrote when I was younger. I didn't know how to transition between chapters in my story, so I would always end off the chapter with the character falling asleep. I wanted to end a chapter while my main character was still at a park, so I made the choice for him to be narcoleptic and have him fall asleep on the park bench. Yes, I really wrote that, only to have him wake up the next chapter with maybe 30 minutes having passed, and immediately transitioned to him being home. Childhood writing really was something else. I took a break between this recording and the next for Sonic's story, so we get to see this narration that's meant to catch us up to speed on the plot. Sure, Sonic Adventure is incredibly easy to binge all in one sitting, but growing up, personally, I was only allowed to play for 30 minutes a day on the weekends, and that was something I always had to ask for, so it wasn't even guaranteed. I appreciate the cheesy little catch-up, very thoughtful. I didn't touch much on the Windstone some characters have to grab first before entering Windy Valley, but with Sonic grabbing the Ice Stone here, I gotta say, while this doesn't serve as anything more than a smidge of padding in some people's eyes, finding a stone to unlock a gate into a brand new area contributes to that feeling of adventure really well. Little elements like this add up to it being a proper adventure we're on, rather than jumping stage to stage. I like both formulas of stage traversal, and this living, breathing world is something that I would really like to see explored in depth and properly by Sonic Team again. I honestly have no clue how Sonic Team hasn't attempted to recreate one of the comic plot lines in some games and have like a through line between said games. I spend way too long attempting to jump onto this jump pad because I was unable to make out the number on the front of it due to the camera wrestling with me. Coming all the way to the top nets you with some more rewards for exploration. And with the game physics, you can actually do a perfect jump up onto the rocket here. I don't succeed and decide against skipping a part of Ice Cap, but I was successful on a later speed run of the stage I might show footage of later. They only use the icicle jumping mechanic either twice or thrice in Ice Cap, and I don't know if the game was bugging out, but I found rotating counterclockwise has Sonic moving faster than when he does clockwise. Weird either way, bug or intended feature. If you noticed upon dropping into this room and navigating it, the room is designed like a spiral that you need to ascend. There have been multiple points through Sonic's levels already where they curl in on themselves, and it's a smart choice. Instead of blitzing past scenery that's gone in a few seconds, you spend more time with these areas and their intricacies of their design. I'm so glad the Lightspeed Dash has been changed to its modern interpretation. Being able to hit one button and zoom through any line of rings versus having to charge up makes the mechanic a tool for speed instead of slowdown. Tikal's warning falls on deaf ears, and there's nothing to see here. I wish they did a version of wall jumping similar to the Chaos Dash in Shadow Generations, where you can choose what piece of level geometry to dash off to. Just pushing a button doesn't really add too much to the gameplay. It'd fall onto the developers to make levels that clearly signpost which directions you should be jumping in to progress, but it'd be really cool if they permitted us that freedom. There really isn't too much level in Ice Cap in Adventure 1, huh? Everything else in this Act 3 portion is sliding down the hill, and it shows its age here. Every time you bump up from the snow and get airtime, your speed grinds to a halt, making maintaining any high speed or thrill in the section basically impossible. Look, right after I do this trick, I get some airtime and get all that momentum cut off like a rich girl losing daddy's allowance. It's a slap in the face. If the snowboarding controls were fixed and the level allowed you to maintain your speed, it'd be more of a blast than it ends up being. Thankfully, It's more fun than other snowboarding segments in the series, but stuff like Sonic 06 isn't really much competition to begin with. Sonic Adventure 2 probably does it best in City Escape. Great to know Knuckles has allowed all the emeralds to just chill wherever they feel like on Angel Island. Later on, he comes off like he doesn't know anything about the emeralds. Speaking of Knuckles, he comes off as a massive doofus here, immediately throwing hands with Sonic. Plenty of people make fun of him for getting fooled by Eggman again, Sonic included, but it's kinda sorta understandable if you remember Knuckles living a life of solidarity before meeting Sonic and Eggman. A rewrite of the dialogue exchanged between Knuckles and Eggman prior to this fight would help make Eggman come off as a master manipulator instead of Knuckles as a knucklehead, but that's neither here nor there. Lots of possibilities, but now we've got this goofy fight on our hands. All of the combats with the other characters in Sonic Adventure are incredibly messy with their implementation. None of them provide any challenge in the slightest, and all move erratically. Short invincibility windows after hits means they can go down in 10 seconds or less too. Inoffensive overall, and I get what they were going for with having all the different POV characters clash, but the execution is sloppy and refined more in Adventure 2 into proper rival fights. Sega's always been good with the ideas, but tend to be lacking on executing them properly. Look, I made Knuckles do a little gliding dance for me. I know Eggman set up Knuckles here and was waiting for his moment to strike, but it's hilarious to think how he just pops into frame in his whole hovermobile, like he was hiding down by the water the entire time and nobody noticed. Tails is magically missing from this scene, making no attempt to stop the Doctor from stealing 2 more emeralds. Eggman's even waving them around and gloating, but our heroes just let it happen. Oh look, there's Tails. Where were you, buddy? 3-1, the characters just stand around while Eggman feeds Chaos some more emeralds. It makes sense with the game's age, but when you've played this before and know what the intent of the story writers was here, you can't help but see all the ways these scenes could be improved with better tools and the skill of today. Think something like Shadow Gen's cutscenes. It's our first fight of 3 with Chaos 4. This fight is probably the low point of every campaign he's in, being Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Jumping around is enough to keep yourself from being hit by Chaos, and it's nigh impossible to navigate without jumping over and over, so you're unlikely to get hit if you just keep moving. Chaos flipping the lily pads is a non-issue. The only attack that could hit you is this attack where he divides into many balls. But again, jump around to dodge and free win. After the fight, Eggman unveils his battleship, and he uses it to make a quick getaway from Sonic and friends. Knuckles ditches you after causing Eggman to collect 2 more Chaos Emeralds, and yeah, while we know he's out collecting the pieces of the Master Emerald, his dismissive tone comes off as foolish. Are the Chaos Emeralds any more important than the Master Emerald? Does Knuckles care at all what Eggman is doing? I'll go over Knuckles' motivations more when it's his turn in the spotlight, but I'll leave those questions for us to contemplate in the meantime. The very land and trees along Tails' runway part for a more proper runway to appear. This spectacle really sells Tails' genius in a quiet way. The land itself is moving at his command. Damn. It's undermined a little by Tails prompting Sonic to jump in when there's no other seat for him, making Sonic ride along the back of the plane. But I guess even all that genius looks over some details, huh? It does fit Sonic's Daredevil personality, but picture this. There's a seat available on the plane for Sonic to buckle up into, but he chooses instead to ride along the back. That'd be an even more effective tool to silently inform us of Sonic's daring nature, refusing safety that's available to him for the thrill rather than having no choice but to. Sky Chase is some more padding, unfortunately. You do the exact same thing as Sonic and Tails, so maybe it is a good thing Knuckles didn't come along. Say it with me again, spectacle. The gameplay here is light and, frankly, uninteresting on its own. The aiming reticle doesn't work at all, preventing you from interacting with the dangerous elements of this level with intentionality. Instead, you spam the button and aim in their general direction, hoping you hit anything coming your way before it can hit you. It's pretty cool when half of the tornado gets blown off and the duo spins out towards the ground below, which, might I add, we can't even see with how high up we are. And yes, I know you can hold down the button to charge it, but I didn't remember that fact at this point in the script and only did later. So I'm keeping this in as is, okay? I really enjoy seeing the effort they put into the camera work in their first 3D outing. You could tell they were experimenting with it and attempting to learn the ropes of this new dimension. The devs were having fun with and engaged with what they were making. Goofy moments of levity are always such a treat in Sonic games. I wish we got to see them more often. You know, just seeing the characters be themselves in less serious scenarios. We don't get to know most of the Sonic cast on a casual level unless you watch TV shows and such, since they're all usually involved with some major threat that requires immediate action. Not that I want a game where Sonic just lazes around at the beach, but it's nice to see that side to him. It's evening again when we get up, and it's another nice attention to detail to see the overworld change as we progress. Helps feed into that days-long adventure approach, even if each stage only takes a few minutes for us to complete. I wouldn't be complimenting this if it wasn't an older game, but since it is, it deserves praise for these things that were not standard at this point. We run into Amy for the first time, and this game is Amy's first 3D playable role in a mainline series game. She attempts to offload a birdie onto Sonic without much explanation, and not too long after, we see the dangers she's in. Crazy how Eggman's robots wander around the city uninhibited, and no police force is attempting to apprehend such a dangerous machine. Amy doesn't seem to be taking it too serious, because she's quickly turning her attention to turning this adventure into a date. Sonic, realizing Amy is in serious danger if he doesn't go after her, lets out a sigh and follows along with her foolish games. I'm not sure why Sonic has this odd white sheen in this area. I don't think it's intended, but it goes away after this racing section, I guess. The bumper car has very slow turning while you're holding the accelerator, and in order to make these turns tighter, you need to let off the gas. As you can see, I remember that after this recording. I've always been kind of bad with letting off the gas in racing games. If I don't keep going forward, I'm going to fall behind, was my mentality. The detail of the counter on the back of the car climbing up with your ring count is a nice touch though. Within a minute and some change, Sonic pops down to the Act 2 portion of the stage and zooms along a roller coaster. This is the sort of automation I like. When it's on theme with the level and used sparingly, I'm on board. These bowling segments are jank, but you can simply shoot off immediately at the pins without charging up to get a strike. I get where people come from when they say Sonic isn't all about speed, because interacting with the slower elements of this level and appreciating them for what they are is enjoyable stuff. Sonic's faster moments are only exemplified when used sparingly amongst some slower moments. Also, when I say slower moments, I mean more like platforming such as this, not pushing crates around or completely halting forward progress. Why hasn't this place been shut down? Twinkle Park has bombs littered all over it. Sheesh. Cute couples get in free, more like cute couples get to sue after sustaining some sort of injury in this crazy park. After ascending the spiral structure of Act 2, we top off this fun stage by hitting the capsule, proving we really were just here for Amy. Sonic, the ever-good doer, is ticked off at himself for losing Amy. She's in danger, and he's going to find her. I don't know why a random ID card drops from the sky and allows Sonic into Speed Highway, but sure, I guess. What does this have to do with saving Amy? Is the implication that he's checking all around the city for her? Beyond the flimsy story justification for going to this level as Sonic, it can easily be forgiven, as this is one of the better Sonic levels in the game. You're allowed to go zoom zoom like every Sonic fan craves, and we also get to catch a ride on this helicopter. This level geometry does technically fall under the floating platforms in the sky that don't fit into the world argument, but a key point of that argument is, I'm tired of seeing it. It's fine in adventure here, because this is a significantly older game trying to find its footing in a new dimension. I simply expect greater things from Sonic now than back then. I'm engaging with this game on its own terms as a piece of history, and judging it for these aspects would simply not be fair with a modern lens. You know what's a fair bit of fun though? Running down the length of this building at high speed. The dramatic pause of Sonic standing on the glass before it breaks and the camera dramatically zooms in on him. Great, fun, exhilarating stuff that makes Sonic so iconic. After the level reaches its peak of action, it tones itself back with a peaceful dawn amongst tighter city streets. No longer are we perilously dangling above pits, but wrapping up after darting down a whole building. Sonic Adventure doesn't use wall running super often, and it's for the best because it's easy to fall off, but when it works, it feels great. I say this is meant to be relaxing, but the people of the city don't care if they run you over or not. Vehicular manslaughter doesn't apply to hedgehogs, I guess. The best way to end this level is by jumping into the fountain and soaring up into the sky. Hands down. We wrap up being chased by little police cars that definitely aren't just reskinned versions of the bumper car enemies from the last level, and I decide to talk to this NPC, which mentions the train workers are on strike. That's a good enough way to justify being unable to head to Mystic Ruins right now, I guess. The lack of sympathy from this lady, acting like the workers are at fault somehow, is way too true to reality. Whew. I love grabbing this stationary man that looks exactly like the NPCs. There's no distinction between him and the other actual human NPCs, so it's the equivalent of running up to any old person you like and carrying them wherever your heart pleases. Tikal agrees that we need to find Amy, and I guess that's the reason we went to Speed Highway. It is still part of the city, I guess. See? Sonic really does care. I attempt to bring the man to the Chow Garden just to see if it would let me, but alas, you cannot feed him to your Chow. A damn shame, really. I take care of my Chow for a bit after saying I wouldn't come back here, but none of it is really something I have anything to say about. I spend maybe a total of 20-30 minutes in the Chow Garden for this playthrough total. I do like how the Chow serve a purpose in the story as a form of chaos. Chow, chaos, one letter difference. Crazy, I know. It's a shame every replacement for them since have never recaptured the beauty of the original. Chow have more customization and the best gameplay integration that always keeps them at the top. Wisps and these rock things don't do it for me. We finally find Amy, but it's too late, and she's being taken away by the robot. I love how the shadow of the egg carrier envelops the whole screen in darkness, only lowering the brightness and not actually casting a shadow over Sonic. Amy gets beamed up again, and Sonic is back in pursuit for his damsel in distress. There's a power-up sitting out on the rocks right next to the place you need to upgrade, and that's not good game design. Takes me aback. I was just out there waiting for you to grab it. Sure, SA2 has you go off to a side section in Metal Harbor to get the Lightspeed Dash, but at least it involves a smidge of platforming beforehand. This is just sitting out in the open in the overworld waiting to be grabbed. Even worse, the ability is next to useless due to the charge time. So this is the only time in which I use it in my entire Sonic playthrough for dispatching foes. How many times in this series has Sonic been pursuing one of Eggman's battleships? Sonic 06's first level opens with one, and we're implied to be chasing it here, as well as in Heroes, we end up on his whole fleet of battleships. So far, we've had nothing stand out about the level beyond it sticking closely to its fiery theming. Fiery obstacles, steam rupturing up from the earth, and lava bellowing out from the rock all give the stage its own thematically appropriate set of hazards. Even these fire enemies which... Thanks, homing attack. The Sonic series sure does love its zip lines, huh? Ooh, the Act 2 music change is top tier stuff. I'm not a huge music guy, so I can't give specifics as to why it's so good, but it's something I'll continue working on, and maybe then I'll share my opinions on music. All I can really say now is the subjective, this music is good. Now, inside of the mountain, lava rises after us, offering us more perilous platforming. What are these mummy dudes locked up for? There's been more than one instance of skulls around too, like decorations on the wall, the fire traps, and then these wiggling graves, I guess? It is a general symbol of danger, but Red Mountain almost strikes me as a very early beta look for Pumpkin Hill. Does anyone else see what I'm seeing? Tails returns after having been MIA since crashing the tornado, and he comes in clutch just as we were about to lose the egg carrier. Now we've got Sky Chase Act 2 with the new and improved Tornado 2. It's here that I realized what the aiming reticle is for. Only in writing the script, sadly, but you just hold the button and lock onto them like Gamma does in his story, or like Eggman and Tails in Adventure 2 do. That simple. It does serve a purpose, albeit still jankily implemented. Personally, there's never enough going on that I feel like I'm in any threat here, so the erratic movement you see is my attempt to stim myself where the game cannot. The transformation the plane undergoes is just cool. Enough said. Funny that he designed a whole hand to grab Sonic while the plane shifts its shape, but not a seat for him. Maybe Tails is aware of the fact Sonic wouldn't bother sitting in a seat anyway, so he doesn't bother making one. The Tornado 1 is actually Sonic's, but this is Tails' design, so surely he could have included one? Sorry. There's not too many elements to the stage here to talk about. Flying enemies, missile launchers on the ship you can destroy, and mines to avoid. Very standard stuff done better in Star Fox games, honestly. We come around to the front of the ship to blast Eggman right in his big beam blaster with more spam, getting our revenge from earlier. Whew, done with that now. Tails' design oversights extend to more than neglecting to make a seat for Sonic, because landing gears were the other thing he forgot. They're lucky they didn't both explode upon landing right here. I suppose they could have also jumped off and let the plane fly into the egg carrier, right? Eggman taunts Sonic and Tails over the intercom, dropping his iconic
Get a load of this!
Before the ship transforms. I never really thought much about the decision, but there's some theming going on here, isn't there? Both Tails and Eggman having their plane and ship change forms respectively is obvious, but I wonder if it was an intentional choice considering our main foe of the game is Chaos, a being that takes on a new shape every time he consumes a new emerald. Then there's also Beta, Gamma's older brother that gets completely reconstructed. It also happens to Zeta, the pink one I think. Big's companion Froggy also changes, growing a tail. That's too many different instances of things physically changing to be a simple coincidence, right? Let's tuck that in the back of our minds for now and continue forward with Sonic's story. This has to be one of the weirdest cutscenes this game has. They could have just put to call here instead of interrupting the game and having Sonic say it. Or, you know, had signage above the door that reads Skydeck. Interesting choice. Getting shot straight out of a cannon into the next level is also an interesting choice. Really compounds Sonic's daredevil nature. So daring, in fact, that it spreads to me, the player, and I, unlike Sonic, am not as cool. Literally one of the most random deaths in this game for me. Please no bully. I said Speed Highway was perilous before, but this level feels the most oppressively intimidating. The rolling clouds below make every jump really count, and even the platforms beneath your feet are not safe for longer than a second or two. Slowly shimmying around these cylinders and climbing ladders isn't fast gameplay, but cutting down on the weight with smart jumps is. It feels like unintentional level design, like veering off the very intentional laid out path before you. Feeling like you got one up on the game by getting a shortcut that doesn't look like it was purposefully placed there is a wonderful feeling, but I'm pretty sure Sonic Team intended for this. You'll often find goodies like lives and rings in areas that you thought no one would go, which means the devs expected it. Sure, the extent of which people break the game is probably beyond the scope of what the developers intended, but they allowed for this sort of freedom undoubtedly. Imagine how much worse this game would be if, instead of embracing this design, the camera swung around harder to prevent any shortcuts, or even placing invisible walls all over. It could have happened. The way the sky darkens intermittently in the level doubles that foreboding atmosphere, and also acts as a part of the gimmick in the Act 2 part of the stage. Oh look, destroying this cannon involves more spiraling level design. Sort of reminds me of a slower paced version of attempting to catch the rocket in SA2's Metal Harbor. That's the second time I brought up Metal Harbor in this analysis, huh? This Act 2 is loaded with enemies and turrets popping up to harm Sonic. The sheer density makes you feel unwelcome, really selling that Eggman doesn't want Sonic to proceed. Now, I'm not entirely sure if I'm just daft, or they poorly signpost when the wind will start blowing Sonic away, but I believe it's when the ship transitions from below the clouds to above them. If you go through the section fast enough, you won't even be affected by it. I also have to say this. The Sky Chase segments serve to prepare us for this raid of the ship, giving us a glimpse of the danger ahead. It delivers here, and almost makes 2 acts of Sky Chase worth it in the end. Oddly enough, blowing up a second cannon the size of the first shoots us forward to Act 3, but it's more of an awkward teleport than other transitions we've had prior. Act 3 of Skydeck is another spiral to ascend, but imagine the spiral was a crazy zigzag you can't predict the path of instead. I love how they use Knuckles moving the ship back and forth just off screen to hide goodies from us, and they get great use out of the limited amount of space present here. The shifting gravity terrifies you even further into thinking you'll slip off, but with enough perseverance, you'll reach the end and drop into the innards of Eggman's ship, only to immediately leave them to confront Eggman harassing Amy and her bird friend. It's discovered that the bird is housing a Chaos Emerald, and before another moment passes, Eggman calls on a brand new robot, Gamma, to take care of Sonic and company. They give us more cinematic angles of this brand new character, hyping him up as something to be feared. However, the fight is another character versus character one, and Gamma's moveset is clearly too lacking to be a proper opponent. He just shoots at you, and moving is enough to keep you safe. That's a reoccurring trend with the bosses in this game, I've noticed. Sonic goes to bust up the robot, only for Amy of all people to come to the robot's aid. She claims they are friends and he helped her. Sonic trusts Amy, which is actually pretty cool of him. Sonic really is a chill guy. I went around and talked to everyone here, and geez, the idle animations for these characters had to be turned up to 300% or something, because I don't think they should be playing at this speed. Everyone looks so unnatural, like they're hyperventilating or something. Just another quirky quirk in my quirky Sonic game. See, I'm willing to write this off because the core of the game, the gameplay, is stellar stuff to me. AAA companies really love hyping up the graphical aspect of their games in some weird pursuit of matching what movies and TV can provide. But I would say that, especially for those of us who grew up on these older games, we believe gameplay is king. A lot, and I mean a lot, of the AAA sphere sell us mediocre games that are very, very pretty instead of fun games. Stuff is focus tested to keep engagement high and what would appeal to the most people at once. But in attempting to focus on selling their game to as many people as possible and keeping them playing as long as possible, they've lost sight of the most important factor in video games: fun. Every game these days tries to turn itself into Fortnite in order to empty wallets as much as possible. Same way Xbox and PlayStation both hopped on the motion control bandwagon once the Wii sold well enough. Something else will replace the Fortnite style of game structure and monetization before long, and AAA devs will be focused on that next supposed huge moneymaker idea. Needless to say, this connects to Sonic here because these games have that spark of fun in them, prioritized before everything else. It's a non-tangible thing that is difficult to pin down, because describing a game as soulful versus soulless is mostly something us as gamers feel with intuition. Yet, millions of people agree that it's as plain as day to see something like Overwatch 1 started with soul and potential, but by the time Overwatch 2 came around, it was long since soulless and only interested in making cash. Part of the reason I talk about remaking these games is to let Sega review their own work properly, and maybe come out of it with an understanding that they lack now. Sonic 06 was rushed, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric was rushed and outsourced, but what's the excuse for something like Sonic Forces being so mediocre and soulless feeling? Forces worried me more than any other Sonic game, because they had taken the boost formula and made it the worst it's ever been in that game. They were steering the ship hard in the wrong direction, and because of that, I don't know if, as a Sonic fan, I can trust them going forward. I could accept rushed games. I could accept incomplete games with jank. I cannot accept them veering towards that soullessness games like Overwatch and companies like EA and Ubisoft have. I can't. Does this belong here in this review? Yes, because I'm using it to uplift Sonic Adventure. Despite its age and horrible porting jobs, there's a strong core here that is still fun to return to. This game is a shining star in Sonic's history to me, which I tried to look towards when the weather is otherwise overcast for Sonic. Back to the game. I pushed this switch twice because, well, I might as well come clean. I was playing this game again while high as a kite and forgot that I had pushed the button. One of the best experiences in the world is having that nostalgic trip back down memory lane while high. Muscle memory guiding my hand forward through this game makes me think I could beat Sonic Adventure while half conscious, because I was already half conscious while playing it this time. Just thought I would share if you've been squinting at any of my gameplay I didn't cut out. Good thing I sliced off all the parts where I was lost wandering around the egg carrier, right? Once I caught a glimpse of Big's big purple butt, I remembered where I needed to go, and I arrived for a fun, wonderful Chaos 6 fight. I love how Big was just standing there and has so little impact on the plot as a whole. If you didn't pick up on the tail Froggy has, being because he ingested some of Chaos's water and becoming possessed by him, Eggman not so subtly mentioned he's found his lost tail. Yeah, me dying to this fight is explained by my state of mind at the time. I, for the life of me, could not remember that you could pick up these cryo egg things, and I was under the impression I had to make him suck them up. But no, you can just throw them at him, over and over without any pause too. The boss fights in this game are so funny, because half of them get eradicated in 30 seconds or less. Knuckles waltzes up after we've already finished everything, and then Sonic immediately dips right afterwards. What? Hey Knuckles. Bye Knuckles. More cinematography at play here. Ooh, we get to see 3 different angles of Sonic jumping to his doom. Well, with the way he lands afterwards, maybe he's made of rubber. Sonic's insane for jumping after the doctor like that, actually. Oh my gosh. The ruins in the middle of the Mystic Ruins open up for Sonic, inviting him inside the menacing maw of a snake's head. I have no idea what was happening with my running on the ceiling here. I also don't know what happened to my homing attack here. Look, I never said the game wasn't buggy and sometimes a bit infuriating with the inconsistency of its controls. I even die again randomly. Damn, if I keep this up, I'm going to be known as WeebBear instead of WeebBear. Just flip around the 1B and you've got it. Ooh, another room designed as a spiral navigation-wise. This has to be the worst room in the game, though. When you sit on the snake's back, you jitter about like you'll fall off at any moment. And I wouldn't blame any player that jumps, thinking they're going to fall off, only to course correct wrong and end up falling off anyways. It's the game's fault for making us feel insecure on this platform, and while a cool spectacle and idea, it lacks an execution to the point of being detrimental to the gameplay. I'm willing to write off many of the game's flaws because of age, but with something that feels this bad to be on, it didn't need to be in the game in this form. If something feels bad, don't do it. Still, It does add some Lara Croft Tomb Raiding pizzazz to the game, and as a fan of both series, I approve. Sonic should delve into more secret ruins and investigate them. Maybe it'd be nice to simply explore a brand new landmass in an open world format without Eggman involved, simply trying to discover something. A chill game with lower stakes, but focused on the gameplay, fun, and maybe more casual interactions between Sonic and the rest of the cast. Just another idea. Anyways, this room sure is going on for a while, isn't it? This room alone probably makes this one of the worst Sonic levels in Sonic Adventure. But when I say that, I mean a 5 out of 10 next to 7s, 8s, and 9s. The level picks up again after this, but it does leave enough of a negative impression to drag down the level's replayability significantly. The next room isn't helping with that much either. Attempting to interact with the mechanic of directing light towards mirrors causes frustration, as the detection for aligning the light over the mirror is precise to a fault. Also, it's simply easier to navigate the room without stopping. Look what stopping and playing the game by its rules got me. Randomly thrown off an edge. I proceed to then ignore the mechanics of this area and run through it, avoiding all obstacles without problems. Also, did I do something here that made the room light up? Is this a bug? I don't know, man. Here's a highlight to the level. Look, the blueprint for City Escape's truck chase. Sure, the Orca is that too, but this is the perfect angle and everything. It's interesting how the game design changes to accommodate multiple characters. We even get more traditional platforming elements, such as stopping to push this button enough times to ascend the wall. This slower, methodical pace for Sonic is fine, because it elevates the moments where we go fast. It just requires careful measurements of both in the right amounts to highlight one another's strengths. Another not-so-subtle teleportation, and we reach the center of the ruins. I have to assume that the water rippling means chaos is present in this room. Maybe this is where he retreated to in order to recover after being beaten. This close proximity makes sense for how he's able to sneak off and quickly get the emerald from Tails' plane in the last story. I have to give them credit for that too, because they established that at the beginning of the game, and they don't mention it again in Sonic's story until the very end. It's basically a smoking gun that lets us know the story hasn't wrapped up. Come on, 6 emeralds? We want to see what Chaos looks like when he ingests all 7. Oh wait, the game is teasing us with what Chaos will look like when he ingests all 7 Chaos Emeralds. Wow, spooky. Sonic games having murals that explain parts of the story isn't every game, but it happens enough to be a reoccurring element. It's never quite explained what these moments are in the past. Other characters interact with Sonic and company, and Tikal even directly acknowledges Sonic later on. Are they recreations Tikal makes to show what she's been through and teach them about chaos? Are they actually flashbacks? Can the characters intervene here if they wanted to? Doesn't matter really. And it doesn't doubly so, because all the lore stuff they build up with the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald get abandoned once the Master Emerald stops being in the main plot of Sonic games. They didn't want Knuckles to be tied down to just his emerald guarding plotline, so they deleted it from existence. Not entirely, but it's forgotten about and stops playing a major role in the stories as soon as Sonic Heroes even. Sonic doesn't even know what's happening, naturally. Then the plot flies by and we're on our way to the final stage. Can't have a Sonic game without finishing off Eggman properly, right? Wait, if Eggman flew over, why was there a bridge that Sonic could cross? Make it at least a little harder for him, Egghead. Eggman's not messing around though. He's got spike balls and lasers aplenty right from the get-go for us. Even these claws that want a piece. I'm pretty sure parts of Final Egg are reused in Hot Shelter for others, right? This is basically Sonic's trip to Hot Shelter. You're not slick, Sega from decades ago. This definitely has to be one of the safer feeling final Sonic stages in the series. Don't get me wrong, I still managed to perish, but Sonic's jump is floaty enough that these platforms aren't anything I'm afraid of jumping between. These hammers move so unnaturally slow that they can't really challenge you much either, and the homing attack once again fails me. Whoa, the physics are wigging out here. Oh well. Ignoring a bunny rabbit who desperately wants to be saved, I continued onwards. The platforming available here feels like something I'd be doing in Mario or any other platformer formula. After taking an elevator down, we run into this room of infinitely respawning enemies that try to explode on us. I like the effort, Eggman, but your traps should probably not include a conveniently placed ladder to escape. I expected to have more to say about the final level of Sonic's campaign, but it actually isn't as standout as the other stages have been so far. None of its elements are particularly challenging or unique, it's just a final level, if that makes sense. I wonder how Sonic feels knowing Eggman keeps plushies of him and his friends for target practice. This level abruptly ends before reaching a climax of any kind in my mind, leaving it feeling unsatisfying. Sure, there's something more in a boss fight afterwards, but the level itself really doesn't leave too strong of an impression compared to other Eggman bases. Again, it's very final level and nothing more. I will commend it for not simply throwing Sonic into space, but this level is another one of the more bland ones in the bunch. Sonic's campaign, with its total of 10 stages, is one of the longest, and I'd say it only dips in quality on Casinopolis due to the pinball not being too controllable. And then Lost World and Final Egg are just meh. The Egg Viper remains, but as far as final fights go, it is bested by moving left and right until your opportunity to attack arises. The jank of the homing attack will sooner get you losing a life than Eggman's attacks will, or being stupid like me. Just moving around should never be enough to avoid a boss fight's attacks. At the halfway point, we're able to jump on these spinning discs with spikes to hit Eggman, which move quick enough to be difficult to time jumps for. Also, he starts destroying one platform every time he begins this attack pattern, so the game puts you on its own invisible timer to finish the battle. It's a good way to ramp up the stakes without an overt timer counting down above your head. Eggman goes for one final kamikaze that I think may instantly axe you if you allow it to connect. I could be misremembering though. Keep walking around at a moderate pace, and Eggman totally lives the dramatic explosions that come after. See? There he is right in the next cutscene. Sonic and Tails reunite while the camera does its best to keep up. Anyone who's played their fair share of video games know that chaos is left unresolved by the end of the plot. And if this achievement popping up in the corner doesn't clue you in, I will. To unlock the final level, we need to play all the other campaigns. Out of all the characters, I think most people were probably wondering what Tails had been up to during the moments in the story where he was MIA the most. Let's see his POV next. It's wild how we went from all these playable characters with their own unique gameplay styles to just Sonic for years and years. Frontiers broke the pattern, and Sega seems to be warming back up to the idea of other playable characters again with Shadow Generations and Sonic Dream Team, but we'll see if they stick to their guns or not. Do you think Tails got his flying license revoked for crashing? Do you think he had one to begin with? Do you think the police would try to restrict Tails from flying even with just his two tails? Would that require a flying license? Would they give a license to an 8-year-old? The world is better off not knowing the answers to these questions. Sonic's actually such a good friend for running over to see if his best bud is okay. Man ran from an angry orca just to make sure his buddy was okay. He's probably got a concussion. The dialogue is slightly different even if the cutscenes are the same, which paints these situations in a new light. Sonic directly offers up the tornado to Tails here, and they rarely touch on the fact that if Sonic owns his own plane, that means he's able to fly it himself. As a kid, I always assumed it was Tails because it was the one he was always flying. But no, it's Sonic's plane. Did Sonic build it himself? Also, Sonic learned how to fly a plane, but he never bothered learning how to swim. Priorities, man. Tails saying, "They have unlimited mystic powers," followed by, "I want to harness that power for my plane," is also wild for an 8-year-old to say. Weird to hear the first time, and only weirder every time after that. He'll be planning world domination by the time he's 10 with a mindset like this. Why does Tails look so disinterested here? I think his irises are clipping into his head, but I like to think he's annoyed because he's got other places to be. You know, Fox Boy here has Chaos Emeralds to run tests on. Something tells me Tails' plane crash got the beach closed. That, or the beach swarming with Eggman's robots. Where have the police been since the intro anyway? Just leave everything to the 3-foot-tall animals, I guess. The humans really do not care at all about anything happening. Let's allow Eggman to take over the world, everybody. His back and forth playground talk is the same as before. Different words, same meaning. Doing this fight as Tails means I can't simply cheese it by homing attack spamming, but this fight isn't difficult the second time around either, unsurprisingly. Events still play out the same even if dialogue is different, so the emerald is stolen again, and Chaos eats it again. Eggman does mention reading the stone tablets, which I cannot recall if he does in Sonic's story here. Now it makes sense why there were robots in Lost World, because Eggman confirmed he read the same mural Sonic reads in his story. Other than that new detail, we're once again looking for Chaos Emeralds. Off to Windy Valley, same way we got in before. Tails' gameplay involves beating Sonic to the emeralds, and the stages are altered with new boost rings that send you forward and refresh Tails' rather limited flight stamina. It's incredibly easy to go through this entire level without touching the ground, due to Windy Valley's abundance of sky and a goal that involves descending downwards. Sonic stands no chance in most of these levels, and his AI is designed to make it easy for you to win. In essence, Tails' gameplay is speedrunning stages with his flight. It's Sonic's gameplay, but less involved because the paths forward involving flight are pretty automated. It isn't fun to fly around as Tails too, because you are unable to get any vertical height for more than 2 or so seconds. You end up using Tails' tails to do more of a glide throughout Adventure 1. You can sum him up as the easy mode of Sonic stages, but also less of them, and you only play a smaller section of the level. The free feeling of flying and being able to make your own path through the levels with creative use of the flight for your own shortcuts is the main enjoyment factor here. On the narrative side of things, winning against Sonic and his encouraging banter is great storytelling, helping build Tails' confidence up, which is key to the theme of his story. He's always had a younger brother vibe in relation to Sonic, and this game really hammers in that dynamic. The next level, Casinopolis, comes immediately after without any story interruption, and it's the sewer section of the level. You can really feel the limited stamina of the flight when you try to fly uphill with it. This level is genuinely a minute long, and it's almost identical to the OG sewer section Sonic stage has. You have next to zero freedom to take advantage of Tails' movement, so I believe it's fair to say that this is Tails' worst level. The playthrough hardly changes, and there's not too many more opportunities granted to Tails for speedrunning that Sonic can't also just achieve in his version of the stage. It's inoffensive stuff, just mediocre. I love how Tails just drops the Chaos Emerald with his jump. It makes you wonder, where do they keep them as to not always drop them while running around? Another question that will never have satisfactory answers. He had to drop it for the plot, because you can't tell me Eggman flying at them is enough to startle Sonic and Tails. This is another thing I'm wondering about. Do Sonic and Tails ever talk about how Angel Island has fallen? That seems like quite the large plot point just to disregard. Ice Cap has us snowboarding against Sonic, and somehow Sonic recovers after being sucked up in the avalanche almost immediately. There's nothing to be said here that can't be said about Sonic's visit to the snowboarding part of this stage. Tails controls identically, so all the issues that existed before also exist here for him. So far, only Windy Valley has taken advantage of Tails' alternate moveset. What they've tried to do with Tails hasn't really been achieved, and is only fun in the sense of the Sonic level being fun. This time, Knuckles comes at Tails instead of Sonic. Game's named after him, and he's just standing in the background like an NPC. Knuckles' fight is the same when playing as Tails, and it suffers from the same issues, unsurprisingly. Emeralds are dropped, Eggman steals them while everyone stares at him in disbelief, and he rightfully calls them bumbling idiots. Yes, Knuckles, those are the Chaos Emeralds. Nothing new is established in this scene, and there's no new gameplay to be found next either. It's refighting Chaos for his Tails. Woohoo! It really feels like they ran out of ideas around the early midpoint of the story, leaving the ventures to Windy Valley, Casinopolis, and Ice Cap acting as a very basic point A to point B story. Collect MacGuffins in a straightforward manner, fight the baddie, and keep on trucking on. It is enjoyable going through the stages and being allowed to just play with minimal breaks between the stages, but the story itself is at the level of the classics here, going stage to stage. Sky Chase Act 1 is up next, contributing to a larger low point present in Tails' story than what is present in Sonic's. Gameplay has been riding on the back of Sonic's gameplay being fun, and not Tails' additional mechanics adding more to the stages. However, after this point is when the duo splits up for some time, so things are picking up in terms of allowing us to experience unique content as Tails. Tails walks around all depressed until Sonic shoots past him, and he then starts following him. The end. A very abstract cutscene flashback, but what it's trying to get across is more of their bond, and that Tails is already feeling lost without his presence to lead him. However, he quickly resolves himself to continue doing what he can in spite of his absence, and the themes of Tails' story and gameplay are starting to form more clearly. Froggy steals a random emerald laying around in the forest, and we go to Tails' mini stage he exclusively has for himself. The issues I took with Ice Cap and Tails' story also apply here. More janky snowboarding that isn't taking advantage of his abilities. I do like this mini stage overall and the challenge it presents moving through the gates, but again, not very Tails-y. To call Kidnaps Tails at this point, and I spent some time talking to the NPCs. Tails' upgrade that we can find here is pointless, since the tail spin before was plenty sufficient enough. It's nice to have, but isn't it also odd to find it in a flashback of all places? It's a weird choice, like they couldn't think of any other more meaningful way to upgrade our Fox Boy. They already upgraded fly speed, but again, this is inoffensive if purposeless. Tikal directly acknowledges Tails after dropping a line about how the Chaos Emeralds are servers? Do they wait tables or something? This is what Eggman must have read somewhere that made him believe he would control Chaos. Maybe. I don't know. Must be on the mural inside the ruins. Before we can get any further clarification, we're thrust back out of the flashback holding Froggy. Big shakes the camera itself with his chunky run, and Tails the klutzy fox drops yet another thing in this game. With this emerald, we can now cook up the Tornado 2. You can really tell they were new to camera angles with this entry, but I admire their spirit and how often they're trying to get it working just right. We see character models stop, jitter, and emote awkwardly, but it's clearly from inexperience at the birth of a new dimension in Sonic's games that's the cause. More sky chase, nothing to say here, so moving on. Boom! Ship defeated, Tails crashes again, and here we are on the egg carrier once more. You can really start to see how light Tails' story is compared to Sonic's. 5 stages to Sonic's 10, and so far, Tails hasn't had that good of a stage lineup. Thankfully, Skydeck takes advantage of the freedom flight provides to create new paths. It suffers from being incredibly short, once again a small slice of Sonic's whole Skydeck level. Sadly, this campaign is way less than the content Sonic gets. It's a shame, but a natural result of biting off more than they could chew with ambition. A tale as old as time. We head up to confront Gamma in another player versus player fight. Nothing to see here, nothing new anyway. Tails takes the place of Sonic here, doing everything Sonic did in his version of events. Reminds me of how in Resident Evil 2 Remake, the A and B scenario had both Leon and Claire fighting William Birkin on the same elevator at the end of the game in each of their respective routes, while both also being assisted by Annette Birkin. Less of a problem here because, you know, this game is 2 decades old. See, Tails, if you had a second seat on your plane, you'd have been prepared for a situation like this where you need to bring someone less daring than Sonic along. Eggman looks goofy as can be with how he spins out here. I repeat, where are the police? Where is everybody? Is Amy uninterested in stopping Eggman's plans? It's important that Tails gets his moment, but shouldn't Amy have been seeing this missile shooting off too? The way this cutscene is paced, she'd have to have sprint off immediately to not catch any of what's going on. Either way, the stage is set for Tails to face off against Eggman in a race, preventing him from detonating a missile that would straight up wipe the city off the map. Tails directly states the message of his story to us, and we have the climax of the story before us. Will Tails rise above and be a hero all on his own instead of the sidekick? Yes. This level is zero challenge at all. I do like the variety of paths available permitted by flying, and it's not a single pathway floating in the sky like Windy Valley, even if it isn't too much more traversable on foot. The final section is a bunch of floating platforms you circumvent with the boost rings, and, well, the level is done as simple as the last. There's no climax to any of Tails' levels. They all just happen with disregard to the pace set up in Sonic's levels. Again, not only does he have only 5 stages to Sonic's 10, but each of his stages are 1/3 of Sonic's. It is a deceptively quick campaign overall. The Egg Walker isn't particularly special either. Spinning his legs that are lit after avoiding their stomps, then bonk him 4 times. It's a lackluster final boss fight, but I appreciate that the length of it isn't stretched out while being too easy. That's the worst when it comes to boss fights. Everyone celebrates Tails' victory, and by that, I mean a small group of people who witnessed it. Then, Tails' campaign is wrapped up, having become an independent hero in his own right. He hits a pose just like Sonic, and we're stuck in unskippable credits again after an hour of gameplay. Sonic's campaign took me 3 hours with some running around and taking it at a casual pace, but if I had been playing Tails with the intent to zoom through it, his story would easily be under 1 hour. Most of the time is spent in levels that do not accommodate his moveset, so I'm left feeling unimpressed overall. It certainly doesn't help that the only major additions his levels add are boost rings and floating platforms. Nothing is really his or designed for him like Knuckles' sections are. He's saved by how fun the level design is and how enjoyable it is simply moving around, but everything that's his is underutilized. I didn't expect to look at Tails' gameplay critically and find myself disappointed to this extent when I started, but here we are. Objectively speaking, Tails left a ton of potential just laid out on the table, and his levels amount to more Sonic stage repeats, but without the excitement of spin dashing around and being only a minute long. It's a huge shame because the other member of the trio, Knuckles, has a gameplay style that is done much better in my opinion. Speaking of, let's see what Knuckles' story has to offer next, shall we? Knuckles the Enchilada. His story opens with Eggman's ship on the move towards him, and we get a brief bit of retrospection from Knuckles on his place in the world. Eggman catches him snoozing on the job, and both Chaos and Tikal bust out of the Master Emerald. Knuckles gets wasted down a flight of stairs before Chaos dips on him, and Angel Island begins its descent. We start our adventure proper at the next day, with Knuckles spelling out our goal. Off we go. I like the implication that Knuckles is going around and asking anyone who will listen where the Master Emerald pieces are, even this little girl. Then I knock her ass out. Knuckles punts this flimsy blockade out of the way, and we enter Speed Highway from the back. I like the smidge of realism present here in this transition. When Tails enters Windy Valley or Casinoopolis, you pop into the playable part of the level immediately. With Knuckles in this instance, we're entering where Sonic exits, and it creates a sense of continuity in the world, rather than just being gamey entrances to wherever the level starts. Another aspect that helps sell that adventure feel. You really get to appreciate all the level geometry in Knuckles' levels, with gameplay that has us looking through every nook and cranny of these stages. Sadly, a flaw that's present in both SA1 and SA2 with Knuckles' gameplay is the variability of level length. Due to the RNG spawns of the emerald pieces, you can end up in a level well beyond what's a reasonable amount of playtime, or you could just be done with it in a minute flat. It's much worse in SA2 due to changing the design of the emerald radar. In this game, you can detect all the emeralds at once, but in SA2, you can only detect the first emerald until you find the first one, and then you can find the second one with the emerald radar. It can also get somewhat frustrating in these stages if the emerald is in one spot you never thought to look for 5 minutes plus. How is it open if the only way in is closed? Is this a new marketing strategy? I don't know. Anyways, Knuckles isn't here to gamble like Sonic was. We instead get to experience the whole upper part of this level, which is pirate ships, a huge moving lion statue with an emerald piece inside its maw, and even a statue of Sonic? Sonic must have some reputation among the people, even if they don't regard him as anything other than just another dude on the streets. Another tick towards silent world building. Tikal decides to kidnap Knuckles before his gambling addiction can plant its roots, though. How do you think Knuckles feels getting to see a civilization of his people alive and well after being alone his entire life? Honestly, I wouldn't even blame him if it brought him to tears. The sort of loneliness Knuckles feels isn't explored at all in the Sonic series, and thankfully, it's an aspect explored in the Sonic 2 movie, kinda sorta. Instead, most of that growth of Knuckles learning to trust and rely on other people is done in the background of the Sonic games, piece by piece. It'd be nice to see a Sonic character evolve and change that's part of the main cast and doesn't just appear for one game and then poof the next. What a powerful anti-war message in my Sonic game. Knuckles doesn't even get a chance to ask a question, and has to contemplate the downfall of his people possibly being related to the information he just overheard. The whole foundation of his life just got sprinkled with critical details that clears up so much mystery, but at the same time creates more questions that don't get any answers. Like a Hydra, answering one question creates 10 more. Super funny that Knuckles comes out of his own hallucination to find Sonic and Tails conked out on the roadside with their eyes open. He doesn't even think to stop and investigate, instead opting to treat them like they're junkies tripping out and just doesn't get involved. Tell me how you really feel about Sonic and Tails, Knuckles. Knuckles catches Eggman hopping into an elevator that he proceeds to slow walk into, like, way too slowly. Is he trying to taunt Knuckles or something? Knuckles almost seems unconcerned with the fact Eggman is collecting the Chaos Emeralds. Why wouldn't he care about the destructive power of the emeralds? Has Eggman not proven himself to be so dangerous and always seeking more power that he should be stopped? Naturally, if he completes whatever scheme of his involving the emeralds, I don't see how he wouldn't attempt to go for the Master Emerald next to amass it all for himself. I mean, it's been shattered, I suppose, but why wouldn't he at least attempt to question Eggman about what happened to the Master Emerald? Especially after Eggman seemingly is controlling Chaos. The way this emerald falls is so goofy, it falls without any weight. We've got an exclusive boss fight for Knuckles here. Chaos 2. He parries your attacks if you attempt to hit him when he's not in a staggered state. You have to bump him back when he's bouncing around to get him to stop, and you need to take advantage of gliding to avoid getting caught in his attack that covers the entire floor. His funky stretch punch is easy enough to avoid if you just keep moving. Definitely one of the better fights in the game, even if still incredibly simple. Eggman manipulates Knuckles by saying Sonic is after the pieces of the Master Emerald as well. Yes, let's believe the guy who used us as a guinea pig to test out the combat abilities of his new weapon of destruction just moments prior, Knuckles. There's gullible, and then there's stupid. Only way I can see Eggman convincing Knuckles of this is if he were to show him some more concrete proof like phony, fake footage of Sonic collecting the emerald pieces. Knuckles probably doesn't know what a TV is or does, so he would probably just look at the picture on the screen and take it for face value. Maybe Eggman could even have AI generate the footage for him. It fit in Eggman's villainous character at least. He's never cared much about the environment. In the next scene, Knuckles is contemplating why Sonic might be going after the Master Emerald. If he had thought about it for another 2 minutes or so, maybe he would have figured out that he was getting duped. Look, I get that Knuckles grew up alone and distrusts everyone as a baseline. So in a sense, Eggman is leaning into his natural inclination of distrust. But damn, playing up his paranoia might be a way to keep the scene making sense in a metaphorical remake that doesn't exist. Eggman's not against using BS photographs to trick people, since he did it to Amy, Big, and Cream in Sonic Heroes, so that could work too. Jumping ahead, our next power-up allows us to dig into the ground. We use it to fish up this monkey destruction switch. Yes, that's exactly what it's called, and what's preventing us from leaving this room we entered? A monkey in a cage we cannot reach. I guess this is a solution to that problem, as on the nose as it is. I can imagine Eggman has little doodads he's created just to entertain himself with. I attempt to bring the monkey destruction switch over to the monkey bot, blocking the way to Red Canyon, and yeah, that's how you get in. What was stopping Knuckles from jumping over the gate anyways, though? Oh well. I enjoy the freedom of the camera Knuckles has. In his playthrough, more than any other, I find I have the least issues with the camera, probably because he doesn't go through any automated sections, nor does he go so fast, so their camera tricks are kept to a minimum. It doesn't always work, but it does more than any other character's campaign. Is it just me, or is this stage in particular very easy to accidentally do in under a minute? It just whooshes right by with this RNG, almost making me feel like collecting the emerald pieces weren't even earned. As a comparison, SA2 has better flow for their emerald hunting stages, until they don't later on, with the final stages taking me over 30 minutes as a kid. Still, I think there's massive potential behind this gameplay style coming back. Imagine a collectathon like Banjo-Kazooie with Knuckles as the protagonist. That formula is made for emerald hunting. Anyways, it's hilarious that Knuckles immediately jumps to the conclusion that Eggman was telling the truth, because he just so happens to see Sonic holding a green Chaos Emerald. I wish he had more justification for punching first and asking questions later. Let me be clear, being hot-headed isn't a writing flaw. What is a writing flaw is not justifying his actions believably enough to the people playing. By the way, look at how Sonic attempts to attack you. He literally just jumps, then spin dashes. The homing attack is the only scary one here, but we know these boss fights are nothing to worry about. Same thing happens as before. Sonic drops emeralds, Knuckles only realizes after the fact, and Eggman and Sonic both mock him for being quick to judge and untrusting. Interesting how now Tails doesn't seem to say a word during all of this. He's just a bystander in Knuckles' version of the cutscenes. Chaos 4 for the third and thankfully last time. There's not much more here to say about it. There's no new attacks as far as I know, and it's still a fight that doesn't feel good to navigate the arena of. The camera did keep pulling away from Chaos when I got too close to the walls, which was frustrating, but nothing that made this boss fight significantly more troublesome. See? Even Knuckles doesn't want to strike a pose for beating such a wuss of a boss. Sonic and Tails head off while we get to figure out what Knuckles is up to when he said he has things to take care of. I don't know why he can't say, I need to find the pieces of the Master Emerald, which I believe Sonic would agree is more pressing anyway. Still too distrusting, I guess. Tails can not only fly, but also hover above the ground. Nice. I'm assuming the reason Knuckles needs to take a back entrance into the Mystic Ruins Lost World stage is because the gate opens for Chaos when he returns from his fight above the egg carrier. Has anyone else taken a long proper look at Big's house? He has a mailbox made of wood. Does he expect to get mail here? Why is his entire home made of wood and leaves, not even having a mattress on his bed, but he's got something as sophisticated looking as fishing rods? Maybe if his fishing rod was also wood, it would make some sense, but maybe it was a gift from Amy or something. Bro's going to have back problems with that bed though. Damn. I like how this statue rotates when it's approached, looking not so subtly like a familiar face we know. Here's a thought I remember having while running around this forest some more. Maybe Knuckles and Big would actually be good friends. This human NPC mentioning one of Big's footprints is the reason why it came to mind. They're both loners who spend plenty of time relaxing around green forests. Maybe Knuckles would enjoy the pastime of fishing, who knows? It's a nice thought, at least. I find Knuckles' piss gloves that let him do his own form of the Lightspeed Dash, except his version of the Lightspeed Dash only lets him hit enemies. Really? It's not a particularly useful power-up, since combat is no focus of this game, but I guess it's cool. I did call them the piss gloves, but they do blend in with the color scheme of his rather well. Yellow does fit his color scheme. Finding the statues took a bit, but we do eventually get into Lost World. Finding the 2 keys without much direction beyond they're in this forest somewhere can be frustrating, but I miss when games wouldn't shy away from challenges that don't give you a hint after 1 minute of being unable to solve it. I feel like games pander to us too much nowadays, and some reasonable struggle makes you a hardier person that's not afraid of things not going their way immediately. It diminishes our ability to problem solve if we're not even allowed to fall before the game jumps in with hints and hints aplenty. I just realized the statues we were finding are also enchilada shaped. Knuckles must be having quite the emotional whiplash seeing so much of his likeness about all of a sudden. I find it to be a shame Knuckles doesn't traverse the ruins far enough to potentially find more information about his people or even the murals. He's the one character that would be the most impacted finding that information. I'd say we get to take more advantage of the wall walking mechanic here, but there's nothing stopping you from also climbing everywhere with Knuckles' gloves. I'd say it is still a good mechanic, because Sonic also gets some good use out of it, and it's also faster for Knuckles to walk along the walls than climb them vertically. This stage feels more box-shaped more than any other, but I wouldn't say it feels any less fun or interesting. This is how I'd imagine treacherous ruins would look in Sonic Adventure, and the more vertical level design is a fun time to be had now and again. Knuckles looks like he's freaking out when Tikal comes for him the second time. I'm glad he gets a second interaction with the past. Everyone watching this knows this whole plotline so closely ties into his backstory, but basically nothing comes from it. If SA2's Shadow storyline was executed so well, imagine how good this game could have been for Knuckles. He's getting more information telling him about the downfall of his people, and learning more about Chaos, the Master Emerald, and the Chaos Emeralds. This plot feels like it was made for him. You can tell they wanted to give Knuckles and the Emeralds more concrete and fleshed out lore, but sadly, Sonic Adventure doesn't reach the heights of storytelling for Knuckles' character as SA2 does for Shadow. Isn't it cool that the Master Emerald shows Knuckles where it can find its remaining pieces? It just adds to more of the mysticism behind the emeralds. Now the emeralds are a plot device for power-ups that is taken for granted by most plots. Same way the OG Super Saiyan form means nothing these days to Goku. We follow Gamma to Eggman's base. Would Knuckles know what a house call is? Has he seen a doctor before? Even word choice can mess with your perception of a character if you choose to read into what they're actually saying. I guess Knuckles is a bit salty about what happened. I would be too. Sheesh. I like how we can see Eggman properly lives in his ship, and he's clearly some sort of gambling addict if he's got 2 different machines in his very own home. Getting to see the place Eggman sleeps and how he chooses to decorate says a lot about him. There's a specific detail that, after I pointed out, makes Knuckles as part of Skydeck a bit more interesting. We all know how Sonic's run-through of this portion has the ship shifting every which way. Well, in the Knuckles section, we start at a higher up point that Sonic and Tails don't get access to normally. What does this lever do? Alter the gravity of the ship. It's implied the ship going every which way when Sonic was running through here was actually done by Knuckles while he was running around this area looking for emerald pieces. A very, very cool detail. These crates take advantage of the gravity, but there's also these doors that drop stuff out when the ship is tilted just the right way. Getting to where you want to go can be somewhat difficult, as well as moving the lever itself into the position you want. With some more polish and extra fleshing out, I can see all the stages from Sonic Adventure getting a significant glow up that makes this game one of the greats of the Sonic series all over again. The way this part of Skydeck is designed makes it clear to me that it was designed for Knuckles first. Sonic's level has him going every which way in a space that otherwise makes very little sense for him to traverse, and this place is significantly more natural to navigate with the glide ability. On the flip side, someone like Tails would be a poor fit here, because the cramped size of the stage means he would be able to fly and avoid all of the platforming in mere seconds. That stage sure did take longer to beat, didn't it? Whoa, why is Knuckles sliding? Oh my god, his eyes. What is Toggle doing to him? Oh, we get our third flashback, really hammering home that the background of this plot is really all about Knuckles. I really wish he would vocalize more about how all of this new information is making him feel. This, maybe even more than Sonic 3 and Knuckles itself, is all about Knuckles without actually being about him. I can clearly see the idea they had here. The execution, which was a mixture of amateur work with brand new technology and likely some crunch time, left Sonic Adventure still fun, but missing a lot of potential in its story. Look at this. Knuckles comes all this way after collecting the pieces of the Master Emerald and being tricked by Eggman, only to let Sonic deal with him by himself. You could have easily made Knuckles go to follow Sonic, only to get stopped by a reviving Chaos 6 and the two agreeing to split up from here to handle things. All it would take is very minor story rewrites. Everything else could be the same and flow together so much better. Man, I am really dreaming big about this supposed remake, aren't I? This boss fight is identical beyond the broken glass in places. Throw ice things into him, and he's done in a matter of seconds. Actually, why are these ice eggs here? Eggman was the one dropping them before. If they ever did remake this game, I'd like it if the refights changed how the boss attacks you to make each replay unique. Maybe making Knuckles have to attack Chaos 6 differently because Eggman is no longer there to deploy those eggs would make this fight more interesting even if it is the same foe still. Yeah, Knuckles plaps Chaos into submission and yoinks all the emeralds from him. Wow, that was easy. Almost too easy. The Master Emerald is restored and the 6 Chaos Emeralds are safe with Knuckles, who's currently standing in the floor. He really thinks all is well. The naivete is strong with this one. Angel Island rises back into the sky, likely causing even more disruptions to the local sea life, but Knuckles' story is complete. He almost sounds disappointed in his recollection, like he's teasing the viewer knowing something more is still unaddressed. A longer moment of contemplation could really serve to tie up his narrative better, but you know, this is me speaking about a potential remake yet again. Can you blame me if you've sat through this much of the video? You're clearly invested in Sonic Adventure as much as I am if you've made it this far, and I know the idea has crossed your mind too. Sure, Sega is guaranteed to not reach the height that fans like you and I dream of, but it's nice to dream. Who's to say someone doesn't do a fan revival of Sonic Adventure in 10, maybe 15 years that spruces up the game in all the ways we imagine? Sad I have more faith in that than the company who birthed Sonic doing right by him. But we have to remember they're a business first. Making a product to sell is more important than making a game fun or making art that sticks with you, sadly. Ugh, that's depressing. You know what else is depressing? The length of Amy Rose's story. 3 stages. The footage I recorded of her playthrough took under an hour. Her first playable debut is spent being a damsel in distress that moves in such a stiff, slow manner for a game series based around speed. Don't get me wrong though, I don't necessarily dislike Amy's gameplay, but there's so little of it that it's difficult to have an opinion on. Her story opens with her reminiscing on old times with Sonic. You know, being rescued in death-defying scenarios is quite exciting. The good old days. She definitely sounds a little too dependent on him here, but that's with intention. We get another sudden blackout, and this time we get to see a whole impressive cutscene of the egg carrier, after which a little birdie falls from the sky, bonking Amy in the head. So not long before trouble follows. Before they're even given a moment to breathe, a new robot appears and rushes Amy and her birdie friend down. The two quickly duck into a store to hide from it. From there, Amy resolves herself to protect her bird friend from danger, which sets up her plot to be more empathetic and down-to-earth compared to Sonic saving the world. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, and I think all long-running series will eventually face world-ending threat bloat. In order to make a game's stakes be taken seriously, naturally, you need to one-up what happened in the last. However, you inevitably reach a point where things have gotten so blown out of proportion, and with existential threat creep comes power creep. Sonic can't just homing attack everything, can he? He's gotta learn new abilities, and those new enemies have to keep up with those new abilities in a vicious power creeping cycle. There's nothing wrong with a more down-to-earth plotline. After saving the world millions of times in millions of games over 2 decades of playing video games, I can see the potential in something a bit simpler with a more focused plot that can deliver in other aspects where world-ending threats cannot. Amy catches up to Sonic to tell him what's up, rightfully so. Sonic looks particularly spooked by her, like he's seen a damn ghost. Amy then tries to hand off the responsibility to Sonic, and he tries to decline. From her perspective, it does seem rude, but Sonic here is under the impression Amy simply wants to play around when there's more pressing matters going on. He's proven right too, as even in the presence of danger, Amy's talking about the two of them going on a date to Twinkle Park. It's immature and not a good look to prioritize your own happiness over responsibilities. Amy runs ahead of Sonic and they get split up, leaving Amy and the birdie to fend for themselves in her first stage, the aforementioned Twinkle Park. These doors open, leading you to a brand new section of the stage just for Amy with some eerie music. They play with the camera here, having you navigate with the mirrors throwing off your exact position. It's not tough stuff, but for an audience completely new to 3D movement, this was probably challenging back in the day. If you see me hopping around more than walking, it's because Amy's acceleration is faster in the air, so you can get moving quicker this way. I don't know why her acceleration is so bad, but jumping mitigates it well enough, so it makes my life easier playing as her. This is a theory I came up with while editing the recording and watching back the footage, but is it possible Amy going through these hallways of mirrors with this soft music box playing in the background is representative of something? I mentioned earlier that coming here was an immature choice, foregoing responsibility and her promise for a date with Sonic. Maybe venturing through these halls with this melancholic, somewhat foreboding music is the game and world mocking her for her selfish decision. It's just a thought though. Back to the video. Hiding from the robot in stages is an entirely pointless mechanic. The moment you leave your hiding space, the robot will just come back around. Not to mention, with how this tutorial pops up, you don't even get a chance to go into the barrel before Zero sees you here, and you'll end up hit if you try to hide now. It's a really discouraging introduction of the mechanic that ends up underutilized anyways. Not a good introduction at all to her gameplay. Stiff movement, a superfluous mechanic, and a level so short that it struggles to leave any impression. It's a huge shame. I stand around for a moment, trying to see all the different attacks Zero does if he can actually keep up with you long enough to shoot one off. I like how he also locks onto you with a laser like Gamma does, keeping a design consistency between Eggman's robots. The air balloon is an odd way to end this level. Was there really no better alternative here? Amy exits Twinkle Park all on her own, only to speak too soon about escaping her pursuer and ending up caught. Think about this. In the time it took Sonic to do 2 action stages, Amy completed part of 1 in that time frame. Really makes her out to be quite the slowpoke in this entry. In the next scene, she's seen comforting the little bird, making do on her promise to protect the little guy. Gamma approaches the cell, and Amy lets him know he won't be getting what he wants easily. I like how Gamma asks why not, because he literally doesn't understand why Amy won't listen to him. Eggman made a sentient AI that's capable of independent thought, and Amy's words cause Gamma to completely switch sides with just this little chat. Eggman isn't the master manipulator here, it's Amy. It's an interesting turn of events that makes you really think about Gamma as a character, and Amy offering her friendship to Gamma is really sweet. It's a huge shame that Amy has no relationship with Gamma's indirect successor, Omega. They're 2 different characters of course, but Omega's clearly a little bit inspired. Don't take this as me saying I dislike what they did with Omega, because he's also great. I don't know why Eggman is keeping a Chow Egg in a cell, nor do I know why he has a minigame where he can bonk himself to lose points just outside. I mash the button to win, and Amy gets an entirely useless power-up, beyond increasing her aesthetic rating by 5%. If anything, the idea of her spinning her hammer here gets taken further and elaborated upon in future playable experiences. So I guess that's some silver lining to this. If I hadn't taken this Chow Egg to the garden, we could have cut off another 5 minutes from her playthrough. Considering this Chow Garden is accessed through Eggman's ship, does this mean we're using his secret vacation spot to raise Chow? I doubt he was raising any of his own Chow here if he was keeping that one egg in prison. This game really makes Eggman out to be completely heartless, huh? Destroy the environment, manipulate Knuckles, trap animals in robot bodies, and keep Chow in prison. Hot Shelter introduces us the crazy mechanic of turning cranks. I get it. It's meant to increase the pressure of being chased since Zero is closing in on you whenever you aren't moving, and they use it for a quirky puzzle of sorts that is more of an obstacle since Tikal just gives you the answer immediately. Neither they nor the moving ladders add that much to the stage overall. Stopping to turn a crank is something we do in Tomb Raider or Resident Evil, not in a Sonic game. I guess they didn't know until they tried. Tikal nearly caught me lacking and almost made a fool out of me, but not today. The whole level is simple, slow Sonic platforming with an odd choice of two block puzzles. The first is so easy that it's only there to introduce the concept to you, and the second, while it does get creative in its placement of the blocks, also isn't much challenge to overcome. I love how Zero bounces in, like you can tell he was spawned in off screen just seconds before. I whap him some to test how many hits it takes for him to become enraged and gain iframes, but we could also pretend it's development for Amy as a character starting to fight back. You know, character growth. Why is there a balloon in Hot Shelter of all places? Maybe it'd have been better if they had Amy sneak into a vent-sized hole that Zero couldn't follow to get out of these levels. That would make some more sense. Man, even Amy is getting kidnapped by Tikal. Do you think Tikal is one of those people who trauma dumps to every person they start to get close with? Girl might need some therapy after what happened to her whole clan, huh? I ran around exploring the ruins in the past some, and it really blows that Amy is incapable of even turning without losing significant speed. I see this altar as the direct inspiration for the Hero Garden. Whoa, Amy. What were you doing there before the cutscene started? Really wish I could have seen that chat between Chaos and Tikal. I like Tikal a lot. She's a soft-spoken person with a good heart. She seems to be the only one of her clan that even cares about the Chow. So that makes her a huge outlier to her clan of warmongers led by her father. Amy gets caught on her way out, but Sonic and Tails leisurely strolling over isn't helping much, you know. Oh wow. It's the Chaos Emerald. I love how Gamma pops up so close to the camera. In Sonic's story, he gets a whole cutscene, but in Tails and Amy's, they cut right to the chase and make him jump scare us. Amy defends him with full context now, and now it all makes sense. The ship starts crashing, and in this version of events, Amy tries to speak to Gamma again before leaving. She makes a case for Gamma to leave Eggman's forces that involves be free and that's it, but it's convincing enough. I know it's more so Amy defending him and witnessing their interactions between each other that changes Gamma, but maybe that Master Manipulator is coming out again. Tails waltzes off within 1 second of them being on the ground, and not even 10 seconds after landing, Amy is having a whole character moment. She simply decides to be more independent. Like it's that easy to change behaviors we don't like about ourselves. Amy checks the birdie's pendant more closely and notices a picture of what appears to be their family. What does she do? She decides to go right on back to Eggman, which is certainly a bold move from her. I completely forgot Amy goes to Final Egg herself. Hot Shelter and Final Egg blend together for me, and it doesn't help that Sonic's level reuses Hot Shelter stuff in Final Egg. At this point, why is Zero even chasing Amy? Did Eggman not update his directive? Amy once again has this odd puzzle element, and I managed to get every single door wrong before finding the right one. I don't know if it is actually randomized, but even if not, I wouldn't remember naturally. Pretty sure it's the same every time. Her final level ends before it really even begins, and I have to say, the flow of all her levels is ending before they begin. It's a huge shame, highly unsatisfying, and just a big fat disappointment. They find no birdie family there, and both decide to go check the recently fallen egg carrier. That's an even bolder move. How does Amy know it's in any condition to be checked? With the ship no longer being maintained, its failing system could also cause explosions, and I'm applying way too much logic here. Immediately upon arriving, Amy finds Birdie her family, and seconds after that, we have a final showdown with this pesky robot that's been following us. We have to bonk him into these electrical walls. It's another fight that's over without much effort, and I'm surprised no bird comes out of Zero. Guess he was just heartless all along, or the animal inside of Zero blew up too. Who knows? Amy sends the bird family on their way, and she resolves herself to earn Sonic's respect going forward. It's a nice message, but with barely any breathing room to explore in the breakneck pace of her story, it sort of falls flat. I do like it as a story for Amy, don't get me wrong, but all the other stories more exist to be add-ons to Sonic's than their own campaigns in their own right. I would definitely stamp her with the worst campaign award if it wasn't for another character in this game that has a completely baffling gameplay choice. Big the Cat is the odd one out in this game. Every other character traverses the level in hopes of meeting some end goal, but with Big, you navigate to a water source that Froggy is occupying and then fish for him. His platforming challenges are non-existent, and so is his place in the overall plot. As much as I love Big Ol' Big, he's genuinely some guy living in the forest that barely interacts with the plot at all. I love how he's sleeping right above a fishing rod upgrade, by the way. Did you know that Big, of all characters in Sonic Adventure, is the one who gets the most upgrades? Now I've enriched your life with autistic Sonic knowledge. Ooh. You can thank me by subscribing if you haven't already. Haha, got the plug in there. As a young child, I never entirely understood why Froggy ran away from Big the entire game. I now realize that he was possessed by some of Chaos's water, but it's still a tad inconsistent. Also, this means one of Chaos's powers are to possess people to do his bidding if they ingest his waters, right? That's actually pretty radical. Anyways, Big's light on plot, so there's very little to discuss about his adventure so far. Most of everything he does involves chasing Froggy with minor interactions with the rest of the cast. I get he's meant to be a more lighthearted character with that whole wholesome but dumpy personality. I get that, but he is the one character which, even with better fishing controls, would feel bad to play. Sonic speed and patient fishing are about as opposite as you can get. With how simple the gameplay is, this is the sort of gameplay that belongs as a minute-long side activity you do here or there, not the main mode of progression. I'm not trying to rag on fishing itself here, because it has its place in gaming, but it does not belong in a Sonic game in the form of mandatory progression. I guess I will try to explain the fishing mechanics to the best of my ability, instead of solely ragging on them. When you cast out your line, you can make inputs on the analog sticks to move your bait left and right, while two of the face buttons allow you to reel in slowly and quickly respectively. When you reel the fish in, a bar on the left fills up. If it fills up all the way, you not only lose the fish, but you lose an entire life. I don't know how else they would have realistically have Big's life count mean something, but resetting all of your progress by making you navigate back to your fishing spot and forcing you to set back up is another mechanic that deflates any enjoyment out of this. Let go of the buttons to allow the bar to drop, and play a game of tug of war with the fish till you pull them to you. Woohoo! Did I mention the rotating of the analog stick moving your bait left or right is dependent on the camera angle, which is constantly shifting? Yeah, so getting the bait to go where you want is basically impossible. Sure, I could have done the tutorial mode that exists for all the characters to get a better grasp on his gameplay, but I guarantee you 99% of gamers went straight into gameplay when first booting up this game. Guarantee you. Another thing I noticed that's a funny comparison to make. I think Big is around the same speed as Amy, but even he has better acceleration than her, so stopping and starting is easier as him. The character that hardly moves feels better to lug around than a character who's regularly participating in platforming. I will give them some credit. At least Big's gameplay feels like a cohesive idea fully executed on. It's just really shallow. Amy feels like she was slapped together without any unified vision and without a solid idea to base her gameplay around, so it feels incomplete from beginning to end. Big's gameplay, on the other hand, isn't fun because of bad controls and being just about the antithesis of what people play Sonic for. Let's add another topping to this awful fishing Sunday. Catching anything but Froggy is pointless unless you're trying to complete the B and A missions on the stage. I don't envy you if you're going for that. All that matters in the story though is catching Froggy to end the stage. He'll frequently nibble on your bait, then swim away, only to turn right back around, nibble, repeat. It's aggravating to even get a look at him, more aggravating to watch the camera spin around against your wishes, and your aggravation will peak when you see another fish swoop in and steal the bait last second. I find it just hilarious that the timer is hidden from view while playing as Big. Yes, it's unnecessary for him, but I also wonder if the developers didn't want people looking up in the corner, seeing 10 minutes have passed, and let it fuel their rage further. Don't worry, it will show up at the end of the level still. While trying to get back into the swing of his gameplay, Twinkle Park took me 15 minutes to complete. 15. What the f? As another insult to injury, after every level, Froggy immediately slips out of Big's grasp. Yes, almost every single time. It makes each of his levels feel even more pointless, and just curb stomps any sense of accomplishment we could feel as players. I enjoy how the camera pans over to exactly where the ice key is. Why is the ice key in the middle of Station Square? Nobody knows. You take it to Ice Cap, and Big gets his life belt power-up that allows him to float atop the water's surface. It's never entirely necessary for fishing itself, but it is required for navigation, so it's fine enough. Ice Cap is a much more expansive fishing stage than Twinkle Park. There's springs that can send you around to power-ups if you want to bear through the difficulty of Big's physics, and you actually need to find boulders in order to break the surface of the ice to fish. It's a good utilization of the level theme and, arguably, the most fun level for Big. It is frustrating trying to get out of the ice if you don't clip out of it by accident. I never entirely understood at what point during Big's floating you could jump out of the water, so there's plenty of footage of me simply struggling to escape the water. Also of note, I don't think there's any enemies on the stage. There are spike hazards, but beyond that, it's all about navigation to where you need to go to get Froggy, or the optional lure power-up in this level. I barely noticed a difference despite getting this. If they were to redo Big's campaign without altering his fishing gameplay, I feel like his levels could be improved on by adding more navigation to getting to the pool of water. At least then, they're leaning into some of Sonic's gameplay. Maybe he can even cast out his fishing hook to hit distance switches or something like that. You can already spank enemies and monitors with it. Might as well give it more use. Does it look like I'm having fun in this footage? Big teeters over being so boring that it becomes annoying and infuriating. When you spend 10 plus minutes on a level waiting for an AI frog to decide to grant you mercy, it creates quite the love-hate relationship with him. Does anyone have the numbers of Froggy's actual catch rate? I swear it has to be single-digit percentage-wise. Does catching other fish make Froggy more likely to take the bait? I doubt it, but I'm curious if that information exists anywhere on the interwebs. There's nothing else to say about Ice Cap is Big, so let's zoom to the end and see how long it took me to finish. Oh, I skipped it. Reviewing the footage says it took 20 minutes. Ooh boy. Granted, I walked around and grabbed some collectibles, but that was maybe 5 minutes of the 20. Jeez. We lose him again, but apparently, in that time frame, Tails chased Froggy through his mini-stage, did the flashback, and is now here. He scares Tails again into dropping the frog, and we're back on our search. Funny that Tails has a better grip on Froggy than Big himself. What are those big hands good for, big guy? This game sets the foundation for Big being sort of klutzy with this plot point alone. You can also waltz right past Sonic in the midst of his story. He's trying to chase after Amy at this point, but Big's got bigger fish to find. I'm assuming him and Amy aren't friends at this point, because you think he would have something to say if another one of his friends were kidnapped by a robot. We follow Froggy to Emerald Coast this time. There's a completely unhelpful tutorial from Tikal that says, your friend is up ahead. Where? The water to my right? To the left? Behind me? Who's to say what orientation you'll be when you pick this up? There's this secret area that is all Big's own that I got stuck finding the exit for way too long. That's cool. Do you think the huge robot fish hurt the ecosystem too? They don't jump out of the water or anything, so what's their purpose here? Don't mind me swimming over the edge of the map. I saw water on the other side, so I went for it. I have no excuse. To talk about Emerald Coast's design, placing the body of water Froggy is in directly in front of you, even as an RNG option beyond the first stage, just doesn't make for a memorable stage design. I will say that it's nice you can fish while floating on the water's surface with the life ring power-up. It's not something I use too often, because if you bring the line too close to you before Froggy grabs it, you will have it snap back to you. You have to at least be some distance away. No cheesing allowed. Don't mind the camera spasming out. Just big story things. There's not too much else to say beyond clocking in how long it took me to catch Froggy, and out myself as unskilled. 10 minutes. This time, we don't drop Froggy, but instead have Gamma come by and snatch him from us. Big begs the best he can, but that cold, unfeeling robot heart does not relent and escapes with his friend. How did Big get on the ship exactly? If he followed Gamma the entire way, wouldn't he have been apprehended at some point? I know seeing how Big got on the ship isn't important, but if you're going to have something happen off screen because it would be too boring, it still does need to make sense to us as the player, otherwise we'll be confused. It's also not even 2 minutes before we're in our very next action stage, like the gap between Windy Valley and Casinopolis. Hot Shelter actually requires you to navigate to the pool of water Froggy's in, but the platforming is so minor that it comes off as padding rather than deliberate challenge. It's a single hallway, woohoo! I like that we have to push a switch to drain the water so Froggy is accessible to us. Interactivity like that makes Big's campaign a little bit better, even if it's still very bad. Watch me struggle to climb boxes because the input for jumping is so difficult. Big gives us the bombastic side-eye before I cast my line out to pull the plug and increase my suffering tenfold. This is basically what I was mentioning should be a thing in Ice Cap, using the fishing rod for problem solving. In this instance, however, it creates a problem. I have zero idea what gameplay purpose this serves, but all it did was make aiming for Froggy more difficult, as the camera would clip up into the ceiling over and over again. It's either that would happen, or my fishing rod would refuse to cast because it also hit the ceiling. Froggy really played with my heartstrings this level. elongating Big's campaign even further. I'll still be playing as him in Vector and Sonic Rumble, even if their gameplay makes me sad. The timer says 5 minutes, but I have not magically become a lot better at this. I restarted at one point to try and get the water to go back down, but it also reset the time back to when I hit said checkpoint. I was fishing for Froggy for a total of 15 minutes, a quarter of an hour for one little frog. The cutscene plays with Big floating in the water, which the game doesn't seem to like very much. Tikal kidnaps us to save us from likely drowning to share her tragic backstory with Big the cat, of all people. This is why I said earlier she might be the kind of girl to trauma dump on you out of the blue. This pain of Big's campaign would all be worth it if we got to see Big the cat go super, but sadly, the Emeralds being here is just lore. Chaos trusts Tikal because she treated his babies nicely, and he apparently trusts Big too because Big's also standing right there. She vaguely alludes to the Master Emerald controlling the chaos, which I don't know if I should take very literally or metaphorically. Perhaps both. Big saying, "I don't think anyone would save us," is pretty sad. Makes it sound like he doesn't have friends. I know he more likely means that no one knows they were even there, but still, he's a loner in the forest. Who would come to save him and his friend Froggy? I struggle to find the monorail because no other character uses it as far as I'm aware. I think I approached the cutscene from the wrong side. What's stopping Big from going straight to Tails' plane here? It's made even clearer here that Froggy was a vessel for delivering emeralds when Eggman directly states it, and Froggy hops through the air to be consumed. Can't tell you how I missed that as a kid. I guess I just forgot the small details with time. Sonic rolls up seconds too late to stop anything and states the obvious. From how Sonic speaks to Big, I assume this is the first time they're ever speaking. They had to be laughing back at the office when they had this idea. Big the Cat has a boss fight. He fights Chaos 6 along with Sonic and Knuckles. He has no attacks. He simply walks towards Big aggressively. Wow. And you cast out your line once to immediately end the fight after that. The developers had to know how humorous this is and did it intentionally to mess with us. Big celebrates his fat W and steals Tails' plane on the way out. Then again, Tails left without it, so finders keepers. How is Big able to pilot it though? Well, if we freeze frame things right here, we can see Big was unable to fit into the tiny seat and is holding onto the back for dear life. I doubt he can pilot it from there, so here's my theory. Froggy is the one flying the plane. It's as far-fetched as Big himself flying it, so why not? That's my headcanon. In any other game series, two characters overlooking an edge and jumping would mean something completely different. In Sonic, however, it's a triumphant, happy moment of two best friends returning to their home and chilling together. Big's even dancing with Froggy on ruins of an ancient civilization. Great! I have a strong feeling that this campaign was made for the fun of it, and that it wasn't intended to be as frustrating as it ended up being. It's clear as day to tell that they never intended for Big to have a huge part of the plot, relevancy-wise. And that would have been fine if his gameplay wasn't aggravating and he wasn't required to be played to see the supersonic ending. You know how Sonic 3 had the barrel and Carnival Night Zone that everyone got stuck on, including me? I could easily see the same thing happening in Sonic Adventure on the Big campaign. He adds nothing other than some levity and goofiness to the plot, which I would say is fine, but gameplay-wise, he drags down the entire experience. Thankfully, he only had 4 levels to go through, but they are an undeniable slog that blemishes the fun this game can offer to play through. It sounds harsh to use big words to talk down Big the Cat, but it's the unfortunate truth. Most people didn't like this, and it didn't have to be here. Thankfully, we aren't ending off on a sour note. I saved a good one for last with Gamma's story. Gamma has an interesting story simply because he sided with Eggman at the start. You were under his orders for the first couple stages and about half of his story, and this is the first time Sonic played around with an idea like this. While Gamma's themes aren't the clearest to start, mostly because the story doesn't have enough time to develop his side switching in depth, they are still present and enjoyable, especially on repeat playthroughs where you pay closer attention to every detail. Right from the beginning of the game, Eggman uses terminology that makes Gamma his E100 series brethren, and Eggman himself a sort of family. It's not the clearest family dynamic, but the game opens with Eggman naming the robot. I like the little spin he does too. Gamma knows literally nothing, so Eggman's first course of action is to send his new baby right into gun training. He also mentions Beta, Gamma's big brother, which we'll talk about more as we get to relevant story moments. The first stage, funnily being a final egg, is incredibly short and introduces Gamma's gameplay style to you in an almost zero stress environment. You have more than enough time to reach the end of the level, even if you take your sweet time learning the ropes. A part of Gamma's playstyle is that his timer counts down instead of up, acting instead as a time limit rather than tracking your playtime in a level. Yeah, I know old Sonic games you had a 10-minute cap, but this is different. Shooting enemies gives you some seconds back on the clock, and chaining together attacks by holding the fire button gives you a combo, which gives you more time the larger it is. Very simple stuff to understand. Holding the button for too long will make Gamma drop aim, losing everything you're targeting, so it's a balancing act of timing and optimization. Gamma's story within Sonic Adventure is so trivially easy that it makes no difference whether you perform good or bad. You'll likely reach the end of the level no matter what, as long as you're capable of running and jumping. Gamma's platforming is lighter overall, focused more on his run and gun gameplay, but just a nice switch up that feels good to improve at. When you see yourself getting something like 30 seconds with one combo, it floods the brain with dopamine. His gameplay isn't much more complicated than that, but there's so much room for mastery. First thing I do is have a seizure on this button for one reason or another. I don't know why I attempted to do this, because Gamma has no need to go in there, but I guess I thought it was a cozy place to spasm out. The camera completely betrays me for some reason as I attempt to head down the stairs and succeed not too long after. Eggman is impressed with us, but he's not done with the tests. Gamma either succeeds or gets sent to the scrapyard. We get to meet this fabled Beta, and before any more than a hello, we're pitted against him for a duel of life or unlife. It's an incredibly simple fight that can be won by spamming the button to shoot, which is what I did here. I don't know if it's hilarious or sad how simple some of these fights are. Beta is insistent that he remains on the crew in complete silence, but we don't see him again for a while after this. The egg carrier takes off, and we get to meet the rest of the E100 series. Eggman does a whole presentation for his crew all corny like, and introduces us to our mission. Look familiar? It's you against 103, 104, and 105. And off we go. First thing I do in Station Square is talk to this guy who thinks we're a government agent out to suppress their protest. That is oddly dark. You know, for a Sonic game. There's quite a few dark themes beneath the surface of the simple writing in Sonic Adventure, and Gamma's definitely got his fair share of moments. The more you contemplate and think on them, the darker the story unravels. I plan to get into some of these existential questions later on, but for now, it's frog hunting time. Funny that this NPC mentions Big as well. Brings together the world into a more fully realized living place. You know, unlike this kid who gives us a tutorial. Don't mind it particularly, but it directly goes against the immersion I was just touting. Emerald Coast opens with umbrellas and bots aplenty in your way. It doesn't make thematic sense to be attacking what should be our allies, but maybe Gamma is just built different. Maybe they're simply in the way. Maybe the devs couldn't design enemies for Gamma. An empty stage would be boring to run through, and thankfully, this isn't an issue the entire game. All the umbrellas allow us to see what huge combos are like without too much effort. Plus, it's fun to leave a path of destruction in your wake. Froggy isn't too far into the level. When we grab him, Tikal kidnaps Gamma like she did Tails. Froggy sends 3 of the 6 characters to the lore dump zone. Crazy. Is Tikal showing these to anyone and everyone? Is it because of Chaos's influence over Froggy, and maybe Chaos also projects memories of the past onto people? I don't think Tikal would make the conscious decision to bring one of Eggman's robots here, unless she can sense the good in him or something. All of these Chow are children? Not a one of them are adult Chow? Why do these Chow look so much lower quality than the ones in the garden? Both Tikal and Gamma have issues with their father figure, so maybe she wanted some trauma bonding with the homie Gamma. This isn't too much new information as our final campaign, but there's still a bit of new here. I do enjoy piecing together the story like this as a storytelling device, even if what we're being fed is somewhat nonsensical, while also being pretty simple. Everyone returns with the frogs they found, and Eggman gets straight to trying to win the worst parent contest. He plays favorite, and I love how Gamma wiggles happily. He's a little less happy watching the rest of his family get abducted away by alien beams to somewhere else. Gamma's been alive for a day or so, and his life is already the steepest roller coaster. Right after the rest of his family goes missing, he walks into a room where his big brother, Beta, is entirely being reassembled right in front of him. This is basically robot body horror. In Gamma's perspective, he's watching the equivalent of a human person being taken apart and put back together again like some sort of Frankenstein monster. Robots may not be able to feel physical pain, but do they feel emotional pain losing the parts of them they associate with themselves? Also, the angle they use here reminds me of one we often see in anime. The way his eyes are positioned are just perfect for it. Contemplating robot life to making jokes is the way we roll in this house. This is the wrong room is the understatement of the year. Perfect thing for a supposedly unfeeling cold robot being to say. Great characterization that doubles his humor. I'm really happy Gamma got to exist, and that Omega, his spiritual successor, is also a great character in his own right. After losing the entirety of his family after watching them get berated, and being all alone in the world, Gamma goes to have his talk with Amy once again. Amy's half of the scene wasn't as interesting as Gamma's half, because right after that context of an abusive family dynamic, seeing this interaction be the first spark that ignites Gamma's change of heart plot is 10 times more awesome. I think Amy's going to end up getting me demonetized. What the hell, man? Gamma doesn't even know the concept of being mean or nice up until this point, only doing good or bad informed through Eggman's praise and discipline. He directly brings up what he's been taught to Amy, allowing her to shatter his limited worldview on reality. The bird and Gamma then lock eyes, and he decides to save them. This is a super interesting interaction, because it makes even more questions pop up in your mind. We know later on that one of the birdie's family is inside Gamma, so is it the birdie inside Gamma that caused this change of heart? Is Gamma his own consciousness that is separate from the bird? If not, how much influence does the bird's wants affect Gamma's actions? None of this is clarified. Again, for what's intended to be a kid's game, I 100% agree this sort of information should remain in the background. Amy says something really questionable, but follows it up with a declaration they are friends now. Amy's empathy plays a pivotal role in Gamma's development, which enhances his character while she displays her positive qualities. It's a great, simple scene that gives loads of definition to both Gamma and Amy. One quick power-up get later, we go up for our confrontation, and we get to see everyone from a first-person POV. Again, Sega was all in on experimenting with the camera angles. They always keep things interesting and dynamic, even if the execution is sometimes not the best. The effort is top grade. This is probably the easiest PvP in the game. Your bullets cannot miss. Easy peasy. Amy saying, "You're not one of the bad ones," again is incredibly suspicious, but I guess it was a different time. Metal friend. Come on, Amy. The way Tails just snatches up Amy is hilarious. Robot friend. Wow, she's really hammering it home. Gamma contemplates the very existence of his life and its goals, and he makes the decision himself to stop working for the doctor. How does Gamma consider saving pulling out the Glock on his friends? Maybe he's completely mentally broken, or this is him silently saying their existence is bad in some way, that saving them involves a mercy offing. I don't think Gamma is aware of how he's powered at this point, so this is an odd conclusion to come to, but I like the idea of Gamma going a bit mental here. The first one we're after is 103 in Windy Valley. The floating robot with segments allows you to easily rack up combo, because each segment counts as a different enemy. Getting to 103 takes little effort, and downing him is even easier. You can genuinely just spam, and the robot will release a parrot before too long. If Gamma didn't know before about the animals inside them, he does now. We dash off to Red Mountain for E104 without any story between. This one is a bulkier level with enemies and power-ups more spread out, asking more of you combat-wise. The enemies sort of float around and wait to be attacked, basically acting as targets to shoot and nothing more. E104 goes down as quick as 103, and I feel bad watching this back. Do the other robots even know what's going on? Gamma appears and immediately starts attacking them without any hesitation. Sorry, Gamma's whole story is existential if you think about it. Eggman was the one who created this family dynamic himself, so it's hard not to think of it as Gamma essentially mercy-offing his family here. Traumatic flashback. Too real, Gamma. It's the equivalent of seeing your loved one mid-surgery cut open. He's seen horrifying stuff after only being alive for a couple of days. I wish Amy had met up with Gamma again and had another conversation with him. Gamma's story could really use another wholesome moment in there to balance things out. Also, from the second the egg carrier crashes, Eggman never has another conversation with Gamma again. He leaves him to the wolves and forgets about him. He's probably assuming he's just scrap at this point, which is even more morbid if you think about it. He's acting under the assumption Sonic defeated him in combat, Am I digging way too much into our robot friend's backstory here and assigning extra meaning in places where there isn't any? Maybe. Again, though, Eggman made it out to be a family dynamic first, not me. I'm just taking things to their logical extension and applying standards of human families onto it. I think a good chunk of the reason Gamma is a beloved character to Sonic fans is because of this unique plotline with lots of inferable subtext. You may notice I'm not talking about Hot Shelter very much. I've said everything I really have to say about Gamma's gameplay, and Hot Shelter doesn't introduce any more wacky gameplay elements until the boss. Move forward and shoot. I guess we have this claw hand that grabs us. That's unique to this level. I lied. This train section is the most difficult platforming challenge presented to Gamma. Sure, Gamma can hover, but check this camera flip out that easily could have redirected me onto the tracks. The train moves backwards and forwards as well, so the floating of Gamma's jumps are a safety net to give us time to correct our jumps on these fast-moving trains. Dropping down this pit and trying to get a combo on these perfectly placed monkeys is peak Gamma gameplay. It is fun and satisfying to achieve a high combo inherently, and unfortunately, the game is nearing its end just as it starts getting interesting with the enemy placements in this level. Maybe Hot Shelter deserves more credit than I initially thought. Sorry for talking over you, Hot Shelter. Hot Shelter is the one level in Gamma's story that actually feels like a fully fleshed out level, lengthwise and idea-wise. The other levels are empty by comparison, simply because they're not doing anything too fun or exciting with Gamma's gameplay. Shame. We come across E105, and they're looking a bit different. They've become part of the machine that is Eggman's base. What sort of existence is this? Permanently bound up to a single location to act as a defense system? Is 105 still conscious here? Really think about it. The fight's a simple blasting of cannons before ending this miserable repurposing of Zeta's existence. Gamma once again thinks of his brother, but in recollection of his mission, he acknowledges that he is one of the robots that also needs saving. Not only is this a mercy offing of his entire family, he plans to turn the barrel on himself at the end. Do you realize how brutal a plot this really is? It's not even trying to hide it, and in returning to this game's story with an adult perspective, I am genuinely shocked at what they get away with telling by using a robot as the story's center point. Sonic and Friends were all doing Sonic and Friends things, but Gamma's story is so unreal, yet super real at the same time. You expect to see Sonic fighting Eggman in any Sonic game, but do you expect to see one of Eggman's robots rescuing his family? Morbid, man. So morbid. The transformed Beta flies above, and Gamma goes to do what he set out to. E101 Mark II. He punches away each of Gamma's bullets, and summons homing missiles we can counter only by shooting them with our own. Beta even messes with the POV and attempts to snipe us with a large blast. Finally, he has a charge attack that leaves him vulnerable to damage afterwards. He's 4 hits to down, and another one of the fights that feel fully fleshed out amongst the game with boss fights that can be ended in 15 seconds or less. Beta doesn't immediately explode like the others, instead seizing up as his systems malfunction. He falls to the floor, clinging to life, and Gamma approaches him slowly, only to be blasted in a last-ditch attempt by Beta to defeat him. Gamma, visibly crooked from his new injury, steps away as the birdie inside Beta silently meets his gaze. Gamma continues forward, and another memory flashes onto screen. His family. The person Gamma once was. The creature acting as the power source for Gamma. Gamma collapses as the bird flies away, and he explodes similar to his brethren. Thus ends the story of Gamma, never to be seen again as the pink birdie flies on screen last second. This is just moments before Amy heads to the ship and finds the birdie's parents. There was such a powerful moment here that was completely wasted. Amy could have come across Gamma as he was dying, and they could have shared some final words. Oh my god, I can't believe they just didn't utilize this scene. I think it would actually get some tears from us as Sonic fans. Not only does this plot end sadder than most other cheery Sonic plots, it's darker too. How often does a Sonic character kick the bucket and stay gone? I'm gonna say it. Gamma is the prototype storyline for Shadow. When they went in Sonic Adventure 2, they said, okay, what if we had another tragic character death? And then Shadow was born. Gamma walked so Shadow could run. While Shadow got to continue living on past its expiration, Gamma ends here. If you don't play Sonic Adventure, you never get to experience this character's tragic tale of triumphing over his programming to be a better person at the cost of even himself. Gamma is selfless and morally gray. No, he's morally pure, but starts the game more like morally transparent. He does the bad things he does because he's told to without any other point of reference, so he holds no blame. Once he realizes what he's doing is wrong, which is mighty quick might I add, he changes sides. He doesn't directly help Sonic and his friends beyond freeing Amy, but he's in the background making the world a better place by reuniting a family. So that counts him among the many heroes in Sonic's series. You were, are, and always will be a hero, Gamma. I actually teared up a little while writing that, and again while saying it. Oof, crying over a Sonic character. I didn't think I would be writing a tribute to a character for this video, but Gamma deserves it. Good guy Gamma. We still aren't finished, however. Remember this pop-up I showed? Now I've completed all the stories, and we can see what the end of Sonic Adventure has in store for us. He's just an ominous question mark on the character select. Spooky. It starts with us zooming right in on Tails' plane, right to that power source, the 7th Chaos Emerald we might have forgotten about. Angel Island re-falls in another cutscene, and then we follow up with a pissed Eggman. He reconvenes with Chaos, and then we cut to Knuckles chilling on his island. He's confused, wondering why everything is set in place, but his island is still falling. He presumes it has something to do with the Chaos Emeralds, and he shows some character growth by going to tell Sonic about them. However, before he can do that, he sees Eggman knocked out, and before he's able to get anything from the doctor, Knuckles is attacked by a stealthy Chaos as well. We then rejoin Sonic, who's seen taking a well-deserved break beneath a tree after having thought he's won the day. Planning his next vacation is cut short, sadly, as Tails informs Sonic of Angel Island's descent. Sonic, ever the good guy, speeds over to see what's going on and to help Knuckles. We arrive at the scene seeing Knuckles and Eggman both knocked down. Knuckles informs Sonic of the situation. Emerald's gone, and Chaos is still causing trouble. Eggman runs off while proclaiming his revenge on Chaos. And before they can run off for that last Chaos Emerald, Tikal kidnaps Sonic yet again. The intensity continues as we're at the climax of Tikal's own narrative now. She stands between the shrine to the Master Emerald and her father who wants more power. He disregards her pleas for peace, and both her and the Chow are trampled. Chaos in the past is angered by this, and he emerges to put a stop to the situation. Sonic checks on Tikal, who upon gathering herself, runs to the Master Emerald. She exposits some abstract lore that isn't used too much by the Sonic series later, and even Sonic himself seems to treat the situation like something casual to be laughed about. Sheesh. Tails looks terrified. While running over to the tornado, Sonic and Tails are seconds too late, with Chaos snatching it up right before their eyes. The action continues to rise because we get an overview of the bustling station square in an animated cutscene. We see their sewer systems are having waves form, and not long after, water floods out from the sewers and buildings themselves. It's a full-on disaster, as a wave taller than most of the buildings comes to finish the job. After a flash, we come back to the city in complete and utter ruin. Chaos forms inside one of the largest buildings, and we get a terrifying close-up before pulling back to Sonic's POV. He's in disbelief, barely given a moment to contemplate what's happening as the Egg Carrier 2 comes onto the scene. Eggman attempts to exact his revenge, but Chaos looses a beam that fells the ship in a single attack. So much for Eggman being of any help. He's blasting off again. Tikal swoops down to Sonic, who now recognizes her, and she takes form in the present. She tells Sonic that she and Chaos reside in the Master Emerald together, and that anger and sadness are driving Chaos to destroy the world all over again. Just then, we see the Chaos Emeralds get sent away, losing their luster and color, gray and drained of their power now. Tikal proclaims that he must be resealed, but Sonic objects, claiming his anger and sadness is not a burden he should continue to bear for all of eternity. We cut away again, seeing all of Sonic's friends coming across the tossed-aside emeralds, and we learn from Tails that only the negative energy was drained from the emeralds. Pause. I guess Tails using an emerald as his power source got him familiarized with the emerald's capabilities up to this point. I'm unsure exactly how using one as the equivalent of gas for your plane teaches you about positive and negative energy, but let's just go along with it. Knuckles agrees, and Sonic gathers up the emeralds to attempt to use their positive energy. After all, their hearts together form awesome power. Apparently, that's enough, and Sonic shows off his gleaming yellow super form for the first time in 3D here. They probably give us every angle, playing into what's an exciting moment for any Sonic fan. Then, we begin our final boss fight. Our goal is to move towards Chaos as fast as we can. With enough speed, we can shoot up his aquatic body and damage him. If you go too slowly, you won't be able to reach his head and damage him before you're tossed out. You only have so many tries for this, because Sonic's ring count constantly ticks down, and if you reach 0, Sonic's dropping headfirst into that drink below. It's a tense race against the clock, and Chaos isn't going to make it easy. He fires off purple missiles at Sonic to attempt to slow him down, as well as fire off beams. The fight has a second, tougher phase without a ring refill, bringing this boss fight up to 6 hits. The missiles turn orange in the second phase, fire faster, and so do the beams. Rushing towards Chaos after narrowly dodging all the attacks sent your way is exhilarating, and it only gets more and more dangerous with tornadoes forming in your path to stop you last second. Nothing can hurt you, but you cannot remain invincible forever. It's very easy to bump into things if you're not carefully moving forward, but with enough effort, you will finish perfect Chaos off and Super Sonic strikes a cool pose. Chaos, now in his base form again, has some Chow approach him. He observes them silently while our heroes look from above. Apparently, the positive energy from Super Sonic neutralized Chaos's negative energy, which I suppose makes enough sense. Positive plus negative equals neutral. Tikal reappears, informing Chaos that the Chow he once valiantly fought to protect are now alive and well, peacefully coexisting with humans. Tikal thanks everyone for what they've done, and both Tikal and Chaos go together to, in my mind, whatever afterlife exists after their hearts stayed in the Master Emerald for so long. Tails really says all's well that ends well when the city they're in is in complete ruins and people likely still need to be saved from the rushing waters. Sonic darts off between camera cuts, and now the story of Sonic Adventure is fully completed. There are missions and extras to do, but my intention with this analysis supercut thingy was to go through the entire main story. Let's review. Overall, Sonic Adventure has some high highs, but also its fair amount of low lows that I wouldn't blame others for being put off by. Sonic Adventure's formula is great when you're playing Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Gamma, but Amy and Big stories suffer from unfun controls and both a gameplay style that feels underbaked and another playstyle that simply doesn't agree with early 3D camera. Tails' gameplay is saved by having better movement, but paying closer attention to the levels he's allowed to run through shows that his main feature, his flight, isn't well utilized. Gamma himself has an excellent different story that explores some heavy subject matter, which simultaneously uplifts Amy's story. His gameplay doesn't start getting good until the very last level, and after that it's over. I come out of experiencing his campaign with more positivity, but can tell that this is his gameplay style's first outing for sure. With better levels like Hot Shelter, much fun can be had, but his earlier levels are much too basic for anyone who's able to grasp the concept of his gameplay faster than under 1 hour. Sonic and Knuckles' gameplay have to be the best gameplay styles present in the game, because they are consistently allowed to take advantage of their tools to move around this intricately crafted early 3D space. There's tons less of Knuckles over Sonic, so it stands to reason that Sonic is more enjoyable to play as, but they did a great job with Knuckles' gameplay too. For having to come up with something different for the enchilada, this is a very suitable gameplay style that still allows for an expression of speed with a different goal. He has very little to do and has a whole plot based around his species' past, but oddly feels disconnected from it. It's more so to call in Chaos' story, not Knuckles' background, if that makes sense. It wouldn't be able to exist with his plot thread creating this whole thing in the first place, but if Tikal was simply another ancient race that's gone now, the story would hardly change. However, Knuckles having some relation does uplift the story of Tikal and Chaos, but it isn't enhanced at all by the curiosity of his character. He makes a few unsubstantial comments, and then spends the whole story feeling clueless and aloof. He's so hyper-focused on the Master Emerald that he completely neglects to acknowledge learning about the history of his very own people. It feels like a truckload of wasted potential, and it drags down Knuckles' story for me. It's clear to me that the game is biting off way more than it could chew as its first venture into 3D, and some things slipping through the cracks is inevitable. Games today still leave plenty on the cutting room floor, and a lot of it is great stuff that is sorely missed once known. Hearing about all the ways your game could have been better makes you really pine for it, and seeing the story that could have been makes me wish Knuckles was more reactionary, even if it is only inner monologues. Sonic, the face of this series, gets the most love and attention, which I have to say was a smart choice to refine to the point they did. They easily could have spread themselves thinner and had every playstyle feeling mediocre, but Sonic's levels all remain some level of fun because of his physics. The freedom of the spin dash allows you to do so much more if you're aware of how to use it, and the game's physics permit taking it up slopes and then jumping to gain massive height. It's using and abusing momentum physics that are sorely missed in the newer games, especially when it feels like the boost formula regularly inhibits your ability to make massive jumps with your speed. I'm sorry, but shouldn't jumping off a ledge and getting seconds of airtime from my own smart maneuvering with my speed be rewarded? It is in this game, and it makes my mastery of the controls and physics feel so rewarding. Speedrunning goes too far for me when I'm clipping into objects and breaking the game into a million pieces, but finding nifty shortcuts, like making a jump I otherwise shouldn't, encourages me to speed through these stages again and again. What's even better is that Sega encourages it. You can find power-ups in places that most people don't go, like this life at the top of this building in Speed Highway. This clearly communicates the devs saw people could get there, and instead of patching it out, encouraged it through acknowledgement of our achievement as players. They basically give you a cookie for trying crazy stunts, and that's in line with the sort of character Sonic is, isn't it? He'd try to run on a building and then zoom off of it to try and save some seconds, wouldn't he? Natural, organic feeling shortcuts will always be harder to craft than slapping a trick ring to send you forward if you jump at just the right time. Sonic Adventure rewards movement, while the boost formula rewards reaction speed. But both are fun. Both require some level of memorization and familiarization with the controls, and are fun for different, totally valid reasons. I'm just saying that here, in Sonic Adventure, using the momentum to my advantage is fun. Sure, the broken spin dash giving you instant speed amps things up to 11, but since it brings more fun than it removes, I love it for that. I understand that such a powerful tool can inhibit player enjoyment too, so removing it for games going forward makes sense, but any potential remake would need to keep Sonic's controls the exact same if it wants its original enjoyers to love said remake. It's unlikely Sega would get something like controls feeling 100% the same with their track record, so I understand the hesitance behind remaking Sonic Adventure for modern day audiences. They've proven they don't even know what's fun about their games when they redo the same formula many times, yet come back with a worse control and physics than prior entries. Ugh. That got a bit downer at the end, didn't it? Sonic Adventure has so much potential to be a modern day remake of a classic game that realizes all that previously missed potential. I can't help it. I've talked at length about this game already, and I've made my opinions known. Sonic good, Tails good control but bad stages, Knuckles great stages and gameplay but no involvement in story, Amy meh story only brought up by her connections to stronger characters and underbaked gameplay, Big the Cat out of place with wonky camera control, and Gamma best story but not fully tapped into the potential of his stage design to maximize fun. I love the autonomy and development intended for Tails and Amy as characters, even if they stagnate for a while and their characters are taken down some odd directions after this. Tails and Amy end up on the sidelines along with the rest of Sonic's friends after going from playable to NPC status, but Sega might be coming back around with playable friends, so maybe we'll re-enter an era of Sonic cast character development. Who knows for sure. I think that's about all I have to say though. I'm sure I'll remember one or two other things afterwards, but if I do, I can make shorts about them like little extras. So, I was originally going to review Mario and Luigi Brothership first, but I struggled to capture footage for it for way too long, so I'm cutting my losses and moving on. Sad, because what will I do with this hat now? Getting the playthrough SA with the Dreamcast visuals was a treat, because I didn't know what I was missing out on. After playing with them, I agreed that the visual fidelity was massively downgraded with the DX port, and it makes the port feel incredibly sloppy. So sad that the port of the game has affected the reputation of Sonic Adventure. But hopefully this video chronicling my thoughts and the game as a whole with Dreamcast conversion mods can set the record straight. I have no clue what this video is going to come out to video length wise, but I can see myself immediately shooting over to Sonic Adventure 2 after this. Time will tell what I decide to do. I don't only want to do Sonic forever, because I am also a big fan of Mario, Pokemon, Resident Evil, and Fire Emblem, to name a few. I also generally like horror, especially co-op horror experiences, and RPGs are also huge for me. We will see. Thank you for watching if you've gotten this far. Thank you for watching if you haven't gotten this far. Would you please consider subscribing to support me? I hope to put out more enjoyable stuff that promotes brain activity, even if my long videos are something you put on in the background because listening to a man's autism for Sonic gets you through the day. I get it. Sometimes you don't have enough energy for your own passions to express them how you'd like, and hearing others do it on your behalf can bring a smile to your face amongst a rough ride home, sitting on the train or bus, listening to it while quietly eating a microwaved dinner, or simply white noise to listen to while you lay your head down at night. I've been there, done that, and a big part of this channel is giving back to the YouTube community who has entertained me for likely tens of thousands of hours throughout my entire life. Sorry if that got a little too deep. I just like to keep it real and talk layers deeper than most people are comfortable with. It's just the way I am. I've never been a talk about the weather guy, even if I have come to appreciate the nuance behind asking questions like that to people you care about. A lot of life is talking to others at that surface level though, and I want more than that, so I will always be keeping it real here. I hope you enjoyed and have a great day.